pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I don't see any public comment, communications.
It was just that one.
Yep, perfect.
Andy Crea, 45 West Fiscal Road.
Okay, approval of the last meeting minutes.
I move that we approve the special meeting minutes on July 17th. I'll second.
Discussion. Those who weren't here, if you read them, you could vote for it. If not, you can abstain. All in favor? Aye. Passes. I'll make a motion that since the Board of Ed is here, we'll put them before you, Steve. Do I have a second?
That absolutely makes sense.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for coming, so you can get out of here too.
Yeah. All right, thanks for leaving us up.
I'd make them leave.
All right, so, we have not yet met, our finance committee meeting is next week. And Casey is busy tying up all the rest, for the 24 year, but I do have, some figures that I can present to you tonight. So I did send you the June financial report. There's just minor changes to that. We are grateful for the special appropriation. That was 674, over a little bit over 674,000. We are able to return approximately 90,000 of that to the town. We still have about 70,000 encumbered for the end of the year that we're anticipating payment on. So, but that's the end of '24. And then as a preliminary outlook for this current year, we are currently at about 75,000 as of today, out of 200,000 budgeted for the teacher turnover savings. There's still about 15 positions left to be filled. Not all of those are teacher positions. Some of them are, like psychologists, speech pathologists. We might not see much, if any, savings in those types of areas. But we'll have more to report on that after next week's finance meeting. Electricity, as you likely know, is expected to be over budget by about 150 to 190,000 for this year due to an increase in delivery rates. So that's probably a familiar issue for you guys as well. And then one other thing to report, we will likely see a savings of at least $50,000 in regards to our magnet and VOAG tuition. There is some legislation going on in Hartford where there's going to be likely a cap on those tuition rates. So if everything goes well, then we can count on 58% cap on those rates and those big savings. So.
There's one question on the legislation. I read it. Some of that works for us, and a little bit of it could work against us. Is that right? If I understood it correctly?
I'm not entirely sure how
Because there's
it
like
would
8
work.
different categories in it.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Can I add to that, that I think that the enrollment in the magnet school is down due to, obviously, CLES opening. And as far as I know, as someone who works in the VOAG school, I don't think that the Brookfield numbers are up this year.
Good. Good.
You're like the
From
number of
last year.
students that we're sending.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we do already cap like the number of students that are sent or that can go to the VOAG program. So yeah.
So for full disclosure, I spoke to Casey today. I went through all of your agendas and came up with, I think you had like 27 resignations and 6 retirees. So you had almost 33 positions. And a couple of the teachers, I asked her to what the new hires were for. And 2 new hires were 50,000 less on each of the 2 new hires. So it was 100,000 and 2 teachers savings. So this is what we talked about at the budget time. And from the preliminary discussions, y'all are living up to what we talked about, control what we can control, because we know we got hardships ahead of us. Preliminary is we're all on the same page.
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
Yep.
So that's good.
This remains a place, as you know, that's unpredictable because you can't tell when somebody's going to turn in a resignation or
Right.
who the best person to take that role will be.
And because we were able to hire some people at step 1, which is fantastic, let's hope that we can retain them. Because if they were to leave, then we might have a flop in the other direction. But
this is what we talked
yeah.
about at budget
Yes.
time, and what I'm saying is the initial feedback is that we're all on the same page and it's working back the way it was working at
Yes.
first glance. So that doesn't mean it won't flop a little bit the other way where some position has to be hired a little higher, but I think my conversation with Casey went well. She said she's gonna meet with you guys on your committee meeting with a full report, and then she'll share that with us, the scorecard. And I don't think we have to get into positions, just to save the net savings, you
Right.
know, like what it is, the balance.
But it's an encouraging start
Yes, absolutely. So,
financially.
yes, yes. All right, anything you wanna ask? Anything, anybody wanna ask?
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to see
Thanks for
everybody.
having us.
It's going well.
Enjoy the rest of your summers,
Yeah, it's gonna go
Enjoy
fast
your
next summer.
Yes.
Thank you.
whatever little bit is left.
Thank you.
No,
Please
we
don't
have
say it
a
like
whole
that.
month. We
I
have a
know.
whole month. We're not rushing this.
have a nice night. Thanks for
Thank
coming,
you.
appreciate it.
Good to see you.
All right, Steve, it's on you.
Okay, I'll try to keep it short. A little bit, I thought I'd give you an update on the capital for the Board of Ed, PC. Terrible at that. They're doing the electrical upgrade at Wisconsin Middle School. Remember we had the conversation the other day? They're gonna be doing that next week. They should be finished by next Friday, the 16th. That's under budget, but I think that's for fiscal year 2022, so that's good. They put in bollards at Wisconsin and the Brookfield High School in front of the entrances. That's to protect from against cars or vehicles, just it's a safety thing. And if you like, we can send you a picture of that. They're nice looking bollards, the roof project, the roof project at Wisconsin and Brookfield High School, an RFP is for these projects is underway for architectural and engineering services. Once they'll spec it out and then go out to bid. We obviously with things like this, they like to do it in the summer, so they plan it for next year. But they want to be fully prepared, go out to bid, do the engineering, then go out to bid, get the bids in, and hopefully that will be done before we even do next year's budget. Right, so they'll have a much better idea if they get those bids back in where they are. I know the high school really needs some work on the roof. The air conditioning unit over the Brookfield High School library, this will go out to bid by the end of the week. Again, it's a capital project from 2022, and I don't know if they can do that work during the school year. It depends a lot on how long it would take. If it's a week-long project, they could do it during a break. If it's longer than that, they don't want to disturb, so they haven't made that decision yet. If you remember, we had talked a few years ago, and some members might, about the water at Wisconsin Middle School, that it has come back and tested below standard a number of times. We've talked about this, and it's in the capital budget for 2025-26 to run a water line from Aquarium. And just like we did with Candlewood Lake Elementary School, run a water line up West Wisconsin Road to the school. We take the school system out from under the aegis of the state as a public water supply company with testing and requirements, and put it on Aquarium. We would do it very similarly to what we did with the water line to Candlewood Lake Elementary School. You have to create a review, you have to assess every single property owner on the line, and then make those decisions. And there's 4 factors for each property: the frontage, the acreage, the value, and we would do that. But the time to put, if that's going to be in the 25-26 budget, we need to plan for it now, get an idea. We have gotten a willing to serve letter from Aquarium, so that means they will take that line on if we create it. If you remember, when we create these lines, we build them, we install them, and then Aquarium takes them over. They own them, they control them. If there's a break, they take care of that. They take care of all the connections, they do everything, right?
Is there a water line that runs down 25?
It would come up from Stony Hill.
There's a water line
at
on Stony Hill?
I believe, yeah. So it's probably 1,600 feet or so. So there's probably 30 properties. That's my understanding where the water line is.
Yeah.
So, are we sure, how are you gonna manage that from a point of view of how far? Because all the properties that touch that line now will get assessed for that, even if they have a good well. Like my
Yes.
daughter pays $500 a year and she has a well.
Yeah.
So all of these houses, we're gonna broadcast this, is the school needs the water and you're the only people that are gonna pay the bill?
No. So remember what we did with the water line to CLES?
Yeah, what we did was the houses that were bad, we gave them the break, not the other houses.
No, we gave every single house a discount because it was like a group discount on connecting the water to their house. It was about $6,000 less than if they had done it themselves. And the town, because we wanted the water to go to our school and we were putting the water line in, absorbed 92% of the cost of the water line. So there are houses that are getting assessments instead of $800, right? $40 a year. So I think we would do something similar.
If the schools are having water issues, are the surrounding houses not having water issues?
We don't know. We've gotten no complaints that I'm aware of from any property owner on West Wisconsin. I think that if we want a water line to go to the school, we have that discussion. It's a town project. I think the town should absorb most of the cost.
Any complaints would have gone to the health department,
Right.
right?
On the Candlewood Lake Elementary School, if I-
What's the quality issue of the water?
I'm sorry?
What's the issue with the water?
The quality of the
What
water.
about,
Yeah, they're getting they don't call it salt, but they're getting high chlorides on occasion, right? And it's a project that we can put it off for a couple of years.
Well,
The wells are fine, the water's drinkable, we test it consistently and constantly, right? So no one should get worried about this, but this is something we're looking at in the future, and it is in the capital budget. On the Candlewood Lake Elementary School, I think when we finished it in a normal calculation, the town would have absorbed about 65 to 70% of the cost, because we had the biggest piece of property, the most valuable, the most frontage, etc. The Board of Finance made a decision back then that, hey, we really want this for the schools, so the town absorbed 92% of the cost. I think we should do something similar, right? There is a value to the houses. If you live on, especially Candlewood Lake Road, if you live on a street that has water available, people who buy your house, I don't need to worry about the well. If worst comes to worst, I can always just go out into the street for $8,000 and hook up to aquarium. Of course, you would have to pay the water fees and things like that, but it is a slight advantage, I think. Some people would argue, say no. Okay? The oil tank replacement at the Brookfield High School, that tank is well over the allotted age. There's $500,000 in the budget for that. We have to engage an engineer to do the project specs. That'll be, they believe, under $20,000, and develop an RFP, and we'll go out for that. Again, they plan to do the work in the summer. That tank is directly in front of where the generator is, if you know where the generator is. If you go into the school, make a right, you go where the administration is, the generator's right there. Here's where the auditorium is, here's where, it's right there. It's right in that ground. I can't do it during the school year because it would take up a huge section of that parking lot, and God forbid any oil has leaked, then you have to remediate it all, and if it's leaked a big distance, who knows? But we don't know that, but they're gonna test that. On a more positive note, your pickleball court is going in, if everybody's noticed it, it's still on target. Candlewood Lake Elementary School. I talked to the chairman of the MBC this morning. That project is still under budget. I've heard from people in town say, oh, I've heard the project school is $4 million over budget. It is not. So if anybody asks you, it is not over budget. It is under budget. The board
Little by a lot, I mean, if we say it's under budget and some hiccup happens, are we close to going over budget?
No, we're over $1 million under budget right now. Over $1 million under budget. And we are 99% complete there. We're now going through all the punch lists and back and forth, where the builder says, oh no, you should pay me for this, and we say, no, it's in the original bid, and they're going through that conversation right now. There are no $300,000 items on there, on those lists. So I'm comfortable right now that we're gonna stay under budget, right? Where we end up, I'm not exactly sure, but I think we're gonna stay under budget. The Board of Selectmen did form a committee to, we had the Manitou Incorporated did a almost 300-page study for EMS and fire, best practices, what we should do, what we shouldn't do. And so that is an incredibly intense and detailed document. So we formed a committee, the Fire EMS Ad Hoc Committee. It is going to be headed up by Bob Belden. It will have a representative from Candlewood Fire Company, a representative from Center Fire Company, the Chief of Police, our Fire Marshal, because a lot of the fire is under their purview, with Bob Belden as the chairman. We've asked them to look at that and come up with recommendations. Take that, distill it down, take the recommendations and give the town those recommendations. There's a lot of information in there. We are also asking, we formed the Ad Hoc Center School Committee with Bob Sinzer as the chairman. That's already started to do some work. We're going to have to hire a recording secretary for that. We're asking for residents to come forward if they would like to sit on a committee. We have the Police Accountability Act. We're going to have to do something with our police station over the next few years to form a committee. We hope to do it at our September meeting for residents and experts to sit on a committee to begin to review what we need to do with the police station. What needs to be done? Should we add on to the existing building? Do we have to do that? Should we build new? Just like we did with Candlewood Lake Elementary School. Let's go through the process, right? And begin to dimension those numbers, right? And what's needed and what's not needed. It's still a little gray. The POCD, Plan of Conservation and Development, we got 3 bids for the consultant. One was $60,000 over our budget, 2 were under. There were interviews with those, the committee, the planning committee, purchasing, and a couple other people sat in on those, our land use people. They unanimously recommended we hire a company named BFJ. They're a small company based out of Middletown. I can't remember the town. I called the references for them. The references were stellar. So we're going to appoint them and hire them. The debt policy, you have that for review. I am going to be meeting on the compressor issue, where Iroquois is going to double their capacity. We have arranged through the offices of Susan Bysowitz. I called her. I wasn't getting much luck meeting with the governor or the commissioner of DEEP, myself. Susan arranged for us to meet with the deputy commissioner. I'm going to express the concerns that we had in the letter that we sent to the commissioner. They will have a hearing. They have not announced when the hearing is, and my guess is they're going to announce the hearing with as little required advance time as notice as possible. One thing that should be noted on this, Connecticut the DEEP has said that they're not going to make any decision on the approval. Now, the FERC has pushed the approval down to the state, so the final approval is the state of Connecticut, DEP. DEP has said that they are not going to make any decision until New York makes their decision, because they have to increase the capacity at their Dover plant too. You can't just do it at one, you have to do it at every single plant. New York State seems to be dragging their feet on it. They have no idea when they would get a final approval. So I'm going to meet with the deputy commissioner, express the town's concerns and what we'd like to see, and hopefully that will come out well. At the cell tower, that possibly on town property up by the high school, there was concern from some residents that it was too close to the high school. Here's how I feel about it. I don't want to see this cell tower near the high school. I think if you possibly can, get it away from the high school. I don't want to see it on private property. The Connecticut Siting Council will not accept any health-related concerns when it comes to cell towers. They rely on a ruling by the FCC many years ago. The FCC has determined that cell towers and carriers and the signals do not harm humans. So you can go to the Siting Council and yell all you want, about, I think, health concerns, and it's causing diseases and cancers and sickness, and they do not consider it. So that's off the table. The town is considering allowing Homeland Towers, the company that builds cell towers, to build a tower on town land up behind the high school. There have been 4 locations suggested. Originally, they wanted to build directly across the street from the high school. No one liked that. No one wants a tower, 20 feet in, directly across from the gym. And then town owns the property behind that. So there was a suggestion to put the tower in the center of that property. The neighbors were not happy, but understandably, they don't want a cell tower that they're gonna sit in their backyard and see. So the next suggestion is put it in the town property up on the hills behind the high school and get it as far away from residences as possible. That gives 2 advantages. One, if you still have health concerns, any proposed site is 800 to 1,000 feet from the high school. The second is an aesthetic concern. A tower that is a half a mile away doesn't stick you in the face as much as one that's 200 feet away. What people and everyone needs to understand is that Homeland Tower never tries to build the tower unless they can prove to the siting council it is needed. They don't even try to start the process, because and if the siting council determines that it's needed, that the cell coverage in the northeast part of town is not good enough or needs to be upgraded, we've had the fire, police, and EMS all come to Board of Selectmen meetings, say the coverage in the Barkwood Falls down is not good. We've had people come and say, I had to stand on a bed in my guest bedroom to get an emergency call in for an ambulance. We've had a gentleman testify that he had to drive up the hill to get a signal to report that his house was on fire. So I know there are people who say, no, the signals are just fine there. If you talk to residents, they're not. But so I think Homeland Tower and their carrier will be able to prove that there is a need for a cell tower. That means if we do not put it on town property, this is our only chance we have. And I'm open to this. I'm not saying we should do one or the other. It will go somewhere. They will find somebody. Homeland Towers has already told me they have 2 residents who are willing to lease land to them. They need about a 60 by 100 foot piece of property to put a 185 foot tower. The chances are it will go. I'm
There aren't
sorry.
any zoning laws that prevent a homeowner from putting a cell tower on their property?
Zoning, everything is out the window. Everything. It's like 830G. They will be allowed to build a tower anywhere. Anywhere. So it could go on the property directly next to the high school. If whoever lives directly north of the high school says yes, we could have it even closer to the high school than the proposed plans we have now. So there's no optimal solution here. We have a choice as a town to try to mitigate the cell tower. I don't think we'll be able to stop it, we just won't. So
What are we waiting on? Make a decision. I mean, are we gonna
Oh.
wait till someone dies? Are we gonna wait
No.
till it costs the town $100,000? Are we gonna wait till one of our fire and police get in
Yeah.
a death situation? I watch every Board of Selectmen meeting and we dance every meeting.
No, I
We
think
do,
we're
no, we
moving
do a
this forward.
dance, Steve.
We had
Make the
to.
decision.
No, no,
Financially,
no,
it's
no.
gonna cost us.
We don't make the decision. So let me go through it.
But you gotta put it to the town.
Yes, we have to first get an 824 referral from the Planning Commission. We received that last week. We then, if we move forward, we have not yet gotten the coverage maps from the Siting Council. Those are due by the end of August, right? We don't want to, and I don't think we should, put forward a decision to the residents without having all the information there. And first, we need the 824
I think that's
referral.
the part you need to communicate. Like, we've had the discussion about if we allow the homeowners to put it on their property versus putting it on town property. I
Right.
think everybody, that's been digested and chewed up and stood out in
Yeah.
many different ways. But I think the piece that we're still moving forward to do the pieces that we need to do needs to be communicated more clearly than saying, we want a cell tower, we don't want one.
I've been
we
talking
want
till I've been blue in the face.
Yeah.
And people
I
who
just
don't
wanna
want
make
a
sure
cell
your
tower,
message is
you know,
more clear.
oh, all these terrible things happen. And the no people come to the Board of Selectmen meetings.
15.
Yeah. The yes
15
people,
out of
we have
11,000
3.
voters.
Yeah, but we've had 3 people who are in favor of the tower come to the Board of Selectmen meeting. So here's what happens. We got the 824 referral. We want to get the coverage maps so that we can show them to residents. They have to be to us by the end of August. Government is sometimes slow. The siting council has requested them from all the carriers. We then would have a hearing. We have to have a hearing. And then it goes to the town for a vote because it's a change in use of town land. A lease on town land must go to a town meeting. And then the town gets the vote. I want the town to be fully informed and have all the information so people can make an informed decision. And once they do that, if the town says no, then we're out and Homeland Towers goes somewhere else.
But what do we do in the meantime? We've got people standing on beds,
Yeah.
calling their husbands having a heart attack. How many people do we have to put in that position?
Yeah.
Because I still think we're dancing, Steve. I watch every meeting,
Yeah.
and I gotta tell you, we have more discussions about moving at 150 feet to 75 feet than to saying, this is how we're going forward. This is the way forward. It's either we're gonna be putting it, let it go on private property, and the town's now got a budget for this money,
Right.
because now it's gonna cost us $100,000 a year. Right? So now we got a budget for money, or we say, you know what, it's going on town property, period. This is the way we're going, and we're gonna go forward with this.
Oh, we can't do that. It's use of town land, a change in the use of town land, it has to go to a town meeting. That's what our charter says. Has to go to a town meeting. And you have to have a hearing before that. And to have a hearing, you have to have all the information. Sometimes, I agree with you 100%. It seems like we're dancing, we're not. We're trying to get all the information we can, right? Planning was nice enough to have a special meeting to consider this, so they could get us their 824 by our August meeting. We were not able to get the carrier maps before then. And, you know, we asked, but we didn't get them. I understand sometimes there's a delay, and I agree with you 100%. It was very clear, we do not have good coverage in the northeast section of town. We do not. You know, we had a guy come from Manchester or somewhere, and he ran around with a signal detector, and there's 2 issues here. One is actual connectivity, and the second is data speeds, right? The worse the signal is, they slow the speed down so that it works. And Glenn raises very, very good concerns. But this is the process. So what I would say, we would be finished by this, because at our September meeting, we will have a discussion as a Board of Selectmen. I think I am in favor of sending it to a vote. I don't want to speak for Bob Belden. I think he thinks we should, but I'm not going to speak for him. I think he thinks we should put it to a vote, and I'm not sure how the other select person would want. I know that she has, in the past, said she doesn't want cell towers, right?
So can I ask, with the existing cell tower, where are the radios? Like, are the radios up and running yet, or is that still exciting?
So I've gotten agreement from Homeland Towers. We have the Vale Road Tower,
Yeah.
right? In our budget, they had told us that they would be ready to put this equipment up on Vale in December of this year.
Of this year.
So that's what we budgeted for, $3,000 a month for the rest of the fiscal year. They told us 6-8 weeks ago that they have the equipment now, they're ready to go up. I went to Homeland Towers and said, listen, can you help us out? Went back and forth. On Monday, they said, yeah, we'll give you a 90-day grace period from the signing of the contract before we start charging you. So that will save us $9,000. So the minute these guys, I've talked to Pete Frangs at the police department, the minute they're ready to go, and they tell us they've got the equipment, then we will sign the contract and they can get on the tower right away. That is not going to fix the problem in the northeast part of town.
Yeah. But I mean, this radio project has also been.
Yeah, you know, we're talking about the radios are still going down, and they are, and they're going down
Yeah.
with more frequency. We have to get our equipment up on the towers we have right now to use the new equipment. The police department, the new comms have all been installed, the new tables, desk, you know, dispatcher units have all been put in place, so we just need to get them up on the towers, and then they should be up and running within, I don't know, 4 to 6 weeks, once we get it up. Putting it up on the tower is not a real long process, right? You put it up, you hang it, connect the wires, you bring them down, you connect it all. The equipment was the delay, and we got the equipment sooner. We're working through it. The radios are going down. You know, they're just getting really old.
So the radios are going down. The EMS had 3 calls drop on serious calls in the
Yep.
past 2 weeks.
Yep.
This is getting to a point where it's
Yeah, I agree.
it's
I
a
agree.
liability to the town.
I don't know if it's a liability for the town, but it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable, I agree with you. So there was Heron, has everybody seen the Herons on Lighter Road? Right, that artwork went in. There have been some changes in the finance department, I don't know, Marcia, did we talk about that the last meeting? Okay. The Parks and Rec building, remember we had in the budget for them to repair and do some work on the building at the high school. You know, when you first go in and lower like you're going to the tennis courts. Turns out that's a post-in-ground building where they just took, you know, the pressure-treated wood and stuck it directly in the ground. There is more damage to that building than we had originally envisioned. We had Kevin Archer look at it. He's come up with a couple designs. We're now looking at it, and the suggestion is maybe you don't want to repair the existing building. You may want to replace it instead with a real foundation and real walls. So they're looking at that. The repairs and the work that needs to be done, there was a $100,000 budget. We got a $90,000 bid. The work that needs to be done is now going to be more than the $100,000 we had. So we're going to take a step back and look at this. Do we rehab the existing or come to all the boards and say we need new, and that's what we do. More on that when we've got that. And that's it for me. Sorry, that took longer than I thought.
Just a quick question, you gave us so many of this updates on things around the schools. Did the portables ever come down at Wisconsin?
No, we've been pushing the MVC to push ONG to get that done. They do have budget for it. They need to get that done, and I've written 3 letters in the last 6 months about that. Right now, do we want to do this work during the school year? Maybe not. But NBC has to come back and tell us when ONG is going to get this done.
Is that the type of thing that could somehow get delegated? Is there a different department that can work on that? I mean, we can't, baseball fields are continuously an issue, and that can't be.
Yeah,
done in these fields,
I'm
you know?
possibly getting to that point because I'm done here. I want this done. We all want this done. They could have done it last summer, right? They could have done it this past summer, the summer that we're in right now. I don't think they're gonna be able to get those portables down before school starts. And the chairman of the NBC has told me that they are working very hard on it, but we need action. If you can't get action, then maybe we say, okay, we're taking it over. Take that portion of the budget out of the school project, it's part of the school project, and just, we go out to bid, hire people to take these buildings down. I mean, when we did it at Huckleberry, I mean, it took them a week to get the portables down. And remember, we're also holding up our baseball fields that are supposed to go there, right? In baseball, we lost a 60 and a 90 at Huckleberry. So people have been patient enough. We continue to push them. I encourage everyone to do that.
Watching your meeting, there's a couple items that came up that I'm not quite sure on. The Greenway, you're gonna ask us to transfer 1,500 tonight, but that's for this
Yes.
local Greenway, that's for the town hall property.
Yes,
going
that's
to-
for,
Then we're going for another grant that's gonna cost us $39,000 for the design of the new Greenway going from here to New Milford.
no.
No, what are we
That
doing?
is, right now it's 39,000. They're applying, Westcog is applying for another grant that would cut that in half.
No,
right?
60,000, it was cut in half to 30,000.
No.
That's what you said at the meeting.
It was originally
No, I don't think
63, got cut down to
63,
30.
absolutely.
They're still
Don't-
trying to get more.
Yeah,
But they're applying for another grant that will
Okay,
cut that
so-
in half again. That design, it's almost $5 million, is to design a greenway from Long Island Sound all the way up through New Milford. And they're allocating that grant by town. I think there's 14 towns involved. And then they would come to us and say, hey, your share, it was originally 20%, now it's down to 10%, and they allocate the design out by I'm not sure the criteria they use. Ours is like 600,000, 620,000, our section. And we have the choice to be in or out, to fund that or not fund it.
The
Right.
next question on top of that is, we get to this funding stage, and we're looking at, and you spoke about, we're building police stations, and we're building rec centers, is what you also spoke about at this last Board of Selectmen meeting. What is the cost to the town to go from Brookfield to the New Milford border? Are we throwing bad money away to get told it's gonna cost the town $10 million, which $10 million we can't afford 3 years from now?
That's a really good question. I have no idea what that number is. There are increasingly more grants from the Build
I
Back
understand
America.
that, yeah.
I would think if we're gonna do that, we would do the same thing as we did with the Greenway, is get a grant. We can't afford to spend $2 million on a Greenway. We need to get a grant to do it. There are grants out there. I don't think they would go for a design, spend $5 million on a design if there was no way you could build it. Some towns like Danbury would have a massive build, I think, right, in some areas. So we'd have to get a grant, in my opinion, that would pay for, 80% of it. And then the town would make a determination whether we want to fund our portion of it. Remember, if you saw Jay Annis's
Yep.
presentation at the Board of Selectmen meeting, we have the second most popular Greenway, second or third most popular
Absolutely.
number of people. Guess what? Those people are going down and buying an ice cream. They're going and buying a pizza. They're using our downtown the way we envisioned it under the Plan of Conservation and Development. So if we did this, we would do it as an economic incentive to bring people to Brookfield, to support the businesses in our town center, in the Four Corners. Now, can you say, okay, this person spent $20 and we're ahead of the game? That's really hard to do. But if you have 174,000 visitors in a year,
Absolutely.
a
Can't
good
argue
portion
that
of
point.
them are spending money in the town.
My point is, as we start stacking projects, and
Oh,
we're talking
yeah.
about a debt policy, and we're talking
Yeah.
about numbers and constraints,
Yep.
are you gonna stack
Absolutely.
$5 million on for the Greenway instead of the police station?
No.
Or are you gonna stack it on before the community center, or are you gonna stack it on before something else that we need?
Yeah.
This is the concern of getting too far into this before thinking it all the way through.
Yeah, well, this design for this Greenway is, they're talking 18 to 24 months to do the
I think we
design
have to be in
portion.
the process, right? It's a multi-town project. You
Yeah.
can't say Brookfield is out because, hey, we don't,
And I don't think
We
they
want
can
it to
start
stay.
till they have agreement from every single town to fund it. You gotta get 14 towns to agree. And I think that's like passing a constitutional amendment, right? Where you need to get the majority of states. It's gonna take a while. In my opinion, our priority should be police station, because of the Police Accountability Act and the fact that we do know what we need there. Police station is first. Community center, in my opinion, would be second, and the Greenway would be third, right? We then have to position all these things in place. Well,
Steve, when you say community center, are you lumping the library in with that? 'Cause,
yeah, community center would be library, parks and rec, meeting spaces, everything that they come up with. But the time to plan for those things is now. We put together a 10-year capital plan. I don't think we'll be able to do any of these projects for at least 4 or 5 years, right? Actually start spending money on them. But you have to plan. And the way you plan is you do the design, get good estimates of where these projects will come in. Right now, they're talking a police station somewhere between $18 and $38 million. That's not really a good number to work with, right? I think we need to do what we did with Candlewood Lake Elementary School. Go out, get preliminary design, preliminary expense, same thing with the center school, the community center. Begin to flesh out what these things are going to cost, and then we look at it in our 10-year capital plan, and you guys obviously make the final decision. Where do we think we could fit those in, right? Is it 6 years? Is it 4 years? Is it 8 years? Right?
But that's where some of the concerns come, is like, how much are we gonna be willing to spend on these projects that we might not be able to achieve?
We may not be able to. We may not be able to, you're absolutely right. We have to be disciplined. I agree that we need a debt policy, which you guys have received tonight, that we can't overburden ourselves with debt. You know, we just have to be really, really careful. But that doesn't mean we can't plan. We should plan, I think. That's why we have a 10-year capital plan, right?
It's 30,000 at this point, right, for the Greenway? Or is it more
No, 30, no, 30.
from us?
30.
Yeah, it's minimal now, I agree.
Right.
Don't get me wrong, I agree it's minimal now. My thing is sometimes minimals become more, now you're into it for $100,000, and what are you gonna get for the $100,000? And I'm not sure this is the case, but it always scares me when you get an estimate. It's like a young couple gonna go build a house, they go get an estimate, and they found out the house is 1.5 million. I mean, they're not gonna afford it, it's never gonna happen, and they just wasted all that money to figure out where they're at. And I think that if you really look at these things and then get more into it, is we do have a police station problem, we do have a library, community center problem, and then you're gonna have another school problem. It's around the corner. So now we're talking, and 38 million was the last police estimate they got for the building. It was 38 to get new, 38 to get new.
That was the top of the range, and that was
2
6 years from
6
now.
Yeah, okay, but the estimate was
They
2 years
took
ago too.
$20 million project and estimated it out.
The new library, when we looked to build the new library, was 35 million 8 years ago. So if we're gonna build a rec center,
The library here,
Yeah,
was they
14,
proposed here?
okay, all right. 14, I thought it was more than that, I apologize. All right, so the new building, we're still looking at $60 million in buildings maybe, $50 million in buildings.
Unless, remember, that $38 million is for a brand-new police station with every single bell and whistle that the police department would like. The absolute to have, the nice to have, and boy, wouldn't it be great. That's what $38 million. It did not take into consideration using the existing building and building off of that into the Grimes property. We have to look at both of those. What does it cost to rehab and build the existing police station? What is brand new, right? The design that's $38 million puts every single police vehicle indoors underneath the building in a heated space, right? That's their top of the line, right? And maybe that's the right thing. We don't know. That's why we're gonna form a committee to look at it and understand it and begin to flesh it out. Because then we hear things just like Glenn is saying right now. We got 40 million here, and this is gonna be 25 million, and this is gonna be 15 million. Let's understand what the real costs are gonna be with real good estimates, right? And then we can make more reasoned decisions.
So the police building committee is already established, right?
It's getting.
I'm sorry?
I thought, well, is the police committee is already,
No, we haven't formed the police committee. We're going to, and we hope to in September. We're asking residents to come forward. We think it should be about 7 people.
and the community center isn't formed either?
I'm sorry,
The
so.
community center committee isn't formed either?
That is.
Oh, no, that's been formed
That's what
already.
has been formed, okay.
With Bob Zinsser as the head of it. There's a rep from Parks and Rec on it. There's a rep from the NBC on it, I believe. So that's been already put together, and they're already starting to work. They've already had a couple meetings. But the police, we are no doubt, we have to meet some requirements under the Police Accountability Act. Now, the state is going to give towns time to do that, just like they're giving us time to go from Tier 4 to Tier 3 to Tier 1 in reporting and all of the things that they're doing. Remember, we hired a consultant to help them document all of the things that they're doing, so they moved up the tier, and we're in a good shape there. In the building itself, there are requirements. Just one of them is you can no longer have an 18-year-old in a cell next to anybody over 18. If they're under 18, they have to be completely separate. Can't even be within shouting distance. Can't be 6 cells apart, right? It has to be a separate facility. We do not have that. My
So
opinion
Steve,
is,
as you're
do we
forming
really?
these, I think it's really important that I think you've, as I've heard you, I listened to the board,
Yeah.
so I think you're doing a good job of getting expertise on the committees,
Mhm.
obviously very important. I think you gotta make sure you have a voice of affordability on there as well.
Oh, God, yeah.
Otherwise, you're gonna get the Cadillac solution for everything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
First
No,
thing I
no.
hear, if I put on my affordability hat, is you can't have an 18 to sell. Okay, I don't know how many oftentimes we have an 18-year-old in the police station, but we send them to Danbury. Right, so we're gonna add $5 million for separate cells where the once every 2 years someone comes in, we send them to another town.
That's
That has that capability.
that
Won't
is-
just say $5 million. You need
You-
someone that
You
has the
have
voice of
elucidated
affordability on
it
that panel.
perfectly, that these guys need these committees. I'd love to have one of you guys sit on that committee. I would love for that.
It goes for someone else, but just, if all you have is people that want the best, which is understandable, you're only gonna get.
Typically, our committees, when we get committees, we get people that are, keep it as low cost as possible, and then you get the pie in the sky, right?
So we should have a few of those over here.
And you're right, you need that balance.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine.
And
that
that's
there-
why I think we charge the community center people, do we rehab center school? Same thing as Huckleberry. Do we rehab it, or do we build new? What would be the cost of doing both? What are the positives and negatives? What do you give up if you rehab, what do you give up? And just look at it, right? And the same thing for the police station. Let's look at it, reusing the building we have and building off of it versus building new. What is the cost? What are the, and we'll charge this commission, what would it cost to get the bare minimums to meet all the requirements? Then what would make life easier and plan for the future, right? What those things, so there's a have to have, really want to have, and then, as you said, the extra things. But you're right, affordability has to be one of the criteria.
And I think to our whole discussion about do we have the money, maybe we can say, hey, the town has no money for the next 3 years, and then we will have $10 million that we can plan for, and then we'll have 15, whatever, right? We could actually put a number on the paper and say, this is how much the town can spend while we keep ourselves, within our.
Just
I
a
think the
model.
capital
We have a
committees
model.
is, thought charged with doing that, should we have a capital committee.
Yeah. And I think our ability and our willingness to create a debt policy is gonna drive a lot of this. Do we wanna go over 10%?
No.
Probably not, unless there's a really, really good reason, right? And we work within that.
And Naheed, you brought up a great point, and that's why I asked Brian to bring his laptop tonight to lead into that. So you led right into it. When we get to it later on, we're gonna look at the debt schedule. As we're starting to form these committees now, we should have some kind of an end goal from our side. Again, they can't come to us with asking for $100 million. It isn't gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I asked Brian, because he had the debt schedule, I thought during budget season, he showed us a brief debt schedule that will outline some of this. So we have a little bit of a thought process to follow up on this. You led right into it.
It
So
might even be helpful for those committees to have that piece of paper in front of them.
yeah, we don't know exactly what it is, and I think Brian was right, the capital committee should drive it. We also should know what does 20 million cost us on an annual basis, and what does that raise our bar to touch to the 10%? So what does every 10 million take us from our current status up to the 10% threshold that we're talking about? All of these things, you started to form committees, and that's why it was talked about tonight. It wasn't talked about before, always was talked about. But you're starting to form committees now to move these projects forward. Ad hoc center school, ad hoc police department. Without some kind of fiscal, like Brian said, everybody's moving in a direction, but we're not moving in a direction that we can all come to a consensus, I don't think. And that's what we have to keep in mind going forward with these big projects. The school was a different ballgame. Everybody wanted the school, everybody was on board. It was a one-focused project. We knew we had the other things, but this was the focus we all decided. Now we're gonna have 2 or 3 focuses, to me, that we really gotta be careful about with carrying the debt of a new school, which has already pushed us to the upper end of our debt.
I agree.
So this is why this discussion's happening.
Oh.
We asked Brian tonight to bring it, so.
But it's good, we should have these discussions. If we're gonna do a big project, let's say the police station, well, you know what, we shouldn't just, New Fairfield, I'm still amazed at them, from the day they decided they wanted to redo their schools to the time they had a referendum, was about 9 months, and it passed, right?
But we can't look at this
Brookfield's a
anymore.
little more conservative that way, and that's a good thing in my opinion, right?
But I don't think we can look at this anymore as single projects. I think we gotta look at the
No.
whole now.
I agree.
We're at a stage now where singles aren't gonna get us anywhere. It's-
Nope.
It's the
And
bigger
you're
picture.
not.
I'm sorry, but
No,
that's.
you're absolutely right, that
that-
we need to plan for that, but they're gonna be voted on as single projects, so that's.
They are gonna be voted on, but if we have a
I
consolidated
agree.
plan that all goes together, that we can
Shows.
afford this, that
Yeah.
we've thought about this, we've put some kind of limits on this, we have a much better passage rate.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And if we all think it's a good idea, and I know we're only 6 or 7 of us, or Marcia included in the family, 8 of us, is we need to put forth something that people will buy into and not shoot down one, because we're
Yep.
doing this as a group,
Mhm.
Yep.
right? We know we have needs. And that's where I really think that, and I know it touched a point here tonight, and I apologize for it, but I really do think this has to be so well thought out and
And
be.
planned. And planned. You're all making exactly the points that I would agree with. I don't think we would get the town to approve things unless we can show them that multi-year plan. Here's what it's gonna do to your taxes. Here's what the changes are. We did that with Campbell Lake Elementary School. The average homeowner, taxes are gonna go up $374 a year. We need to put it in dollars and cents and be reasonable about it and stay within our debt policy. If that means we can't do a community center for 10 years, so be it.
Because you mentioned one thing, but it wasn't consistent with what I remember. In the budget, we funded the first year of the 10-year school facility improvement plan, right, whatever the hell it's called. My understanding was if we executed that 10-year plan, that we weren't gonna need to build new schools, that those were gonna be okay for a fairly significant amount of time.
Yeah,
Did I understand that wrong, or?
No, my understanding is the same as yours.
Yeah.
So we need to get, because I don't like that you shouldn't yet, we need to get that confirmed. If we execute this 10-year plan that we started year 1 on, that, how good are those schools good for? Because if
I
they're
mean, the
coming up in
building,
the
yeah,
same
the
period,
building
we're,
conditions study said Wisconsin and high school were actually.
that was like 30 years, I don't remember the number. I don't know.
I've heard, maybe I'm wrong.
But let's get that confirmed, because if it is way out, then we don't have to consider it, but if it's
That's,
like,
that's the puzzle piece that we need to figure out
is
before we go
it a
into.
puzzle piece or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so is there a way to get someone to
They
confirm
did
that
say
for us?
that the good news was.
So
that
they
we-
did, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
I was
Yeah.
surprised, but.
All right, yeah,
Okay.
so is
All right.
I. He didn't even believe it.
I still have
All right.
concerns, but if y'all remember better than me, I'm good.
I thought I did, but that's why I wanted to double check.
Just need
Can
to
we-
plan the upkeep
Yeah.
dollars
Yeah.
along the way.
And that was part of the capital planning on the school side, is these are the projects we know.
Yeah.
Going back to the capital, why is the library AC, if it's a 2022 project, still only getting put out to bid now?
There was an issue with the structure of the roof, and it was in ARPA, and then they didn't have enough money to do the structure. They pulled it back, we moved it out of ARPA because we were worried about spending it.
Yeah.
And so in this year's budget, they had the rest of the money.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Marcia?
All right, 2024, the year that just ended, the update, last month I said I didn't know if we were gonna be able to find projects for LoSiP because of the new CHRO rules. We were, and so that will be, we'll accrue that as of June 30th, 2024.
How much is that?
163,000. It was in the budget, that I just thought that we may have to have in this year. But Karma, we talked that they said they were going to give a distribution this month. We know that the amount that it was deposited this week for almost $22,000. Expenditures that we have encumbrances, and we were trying to do an encumbrance policy where we would cut everything off at July 31st, because Munis has a horrible record for reporting encumbrances, and then it'll, add some to next year's budget, and it's just a mess. But we've got this electricity issue for this year, and so we were trying to figure out how do we offset that. And what we decided to do was to keep the encumbrances for some of the professional fees. And what that means, for example, is last year in Blight, we had $30,000 for Blight legal fees. We spent 20, so there's 10,000 left. that we will encumber that. It's like an accounts payable, but the goods or services haven't been received. So I can see Dan doing the calculations. We're gonna debit expense from last year and credit encumbrances payable. And so the first 10,000 of this year will wash that out. We're gonna do it with hard journal entries instead of the munis, so it doesn't screw it all up, and, because it will keep going back and changing the numbers on us, and that's not acceptable. So if we do that with the legal fees and one for the actuary fee, it's all the same project. So it's still these two blight cases. So we're not spending more money, it's just an accounting adjustment so that it'll come out of last year's, but the first 50,000 will come out of last year's budget instead of this year's budget. The school looked at the same thing because they have electricity to offset as well. And so that's one of the strategies that we were thinking about doing. If we didn't do this, and if we start doing encumbrances for these two projects this year, we're already over budget in July. And it's the same two cases, so it's just an accounting thing and not a spending thing. Does that make sense?
Just to make sure, so just use the blight one. So the 10,000 is 10,000, we know that we're gonna spend on the blight lawsuit, so we're making an encumbrance. It's not,
And we already had the purchase order, so it's all correct in the books, and you
so
can
we'll be
audit
spent,
them
we'll
and
be spent
stuff.
that. Understand.
Yes, and so, for things that weren't gonna be added spending, just working within the accounting. So let's say there's no new blight fines, that we've got, I think, 15,000 or 20,000 in this year's budget. That should free some of that up. And all of these are estimates by the attorneys that, on how much it's gonna cost. I did notice that Tom Beecher puts a lot more up front, and the other attorneys last year had less up front, and then we had to keep increasing it during the year. So hopefully we're seeing worst case scenarios as we do these encumbrances at the beginning of the year, because we get his estimate on each one of the cases. So that hopefully helps offset some of this electrical for this year. We're working on closing the books. The final check run is tomorrow. We're gonna have the financial statements to the auditors when they come here September 9th. It really went smooth last year. We dropped everything on them that first day. We didn't hear from them all week. That's what I like. And then we'll ask you for the final transfers at the October meeting. We just, with the Board of Selectmen meeting on the 3rd, we're not gonna be able to get it closed, because I need that Labor Day weekend to get some of this done. So I won't be able to get it to their agenda and stuff in September.
But in the September meeting, can we see the?
Yes, because they'll be here the 9th and your meeting's the 11th.
Okay, so we'll see it in the September meeting, even though the actual transfer request is in
Correct.
October. That's fine, okay.
Correct. For the 2025, some good news. We could get another 30,000 for the reopening grant. We had about $500,000 we got on that. They audited it. There were no changes in that audit. And as part of that, they said you're free to apply for Category Z financing, which is the administrative costs, up to 30,000. And what we're waiting for is just me to have time to go back and look at timesheets, look at emails, and pull together how much time we spent administratively on that grant. The grant, even though they want to meet every 2 weeks, it's not due until June 2025, or May 2025. So it's the only thing we know so far that's going to be a change in the revenues in this current year. Expenditures, we know about electricity. There's small changes here and there that the departments are bringing in. We try at the beginning of the year to only do transfers every quarter. And we're working with the Center Fire to transition the accounting to the town. I have to say that it's been lots and lots of hours, and we have Lou from the fire department and Jules from purchasing to thank for just doing massive amounts to try and transition that. We have, you'll see that in the budget to actual, the chart of accounts has been changed and expanded for that. We have a condensed version of it to go with our, to go with the Connecticut's uniform chart of accounts, and then that expands even further for the reporting for them, so it looks more like what their reporting looks like. So hopefully making everybody happy with that. I'm disappointed to say that Munis has let us down a little bit, and we've had some hiccups with Munis and getting it to work on their computers, but I think we're through that now. So so that's starting, and it's still going to take a lot to, you know, what are we going to do with their credit cards? What are we going to do with some of these others? But they've been great to work with, and Lou and Jules have really put in a lot of time. Audit update, still no issues. They'll be out here the weeks of the 9th and the 16th. Any questions on any of that?
Yes. All right. Electricity. I think the numbers are like 180 for the school, 90 for the town.
I
Correct?
think it was 68 was the town. correct?
68. So also listening to your Board of Selectmen meeting, you mentioned that the center school bill is usually 700, but it came in at 5,000.
Yeah.
So that's $4,300. So if that's $4,300 over how many months?
No, what we think happened there is Eversource is estimating the bill, and they took a year ago's bill.
A year ago, though, we were still mothballed there, weren't we?
No.
No, we were
We
still,
weren't? Okay.
It was
still,
summer
the
school.
building was still up and running
Yeah.
at full. So we're, we sent Sheldon over to check the actual meter, right? And we're going back to Eversource and saying, you're way off. You're way off.
Because that number scares me if you're only projecting $60,000 and you got
It
$4,000
just,
burnt in the first month.
it sent us almost into orbit when we first looked at it.
But the math doesn't work the way it stands.
Correct, we understand.
Okay. I
No,
just-
no, that, we believe that that bill is
Okay, I
based,
didn't put-
Yeah.
we're guessing that Eversource estimated based on a year ago's bill, plus they put a factor in for the temperature and the heat and everything, and the building was still up and running
Okay.
last July.
All right. I
So-
just, the math didn't work for me, that's
No,
all.
doesn't work for anybody.
All right, now, the school's giving us back 90,000, Rosa said. Why can't we put that towards the electricity? Or, we know it's coming, why can't we take that and, did we allocate it to the schools already?
Well,
We-
what was the policy that we had that they could use anything that was, well, I guess they're giving us back the commission.
So we absolutely could do that. We could carry it over, we could do a transfer in the 2024 year to do that. What we want to look at, however, is we want to get the final numbers for the tax revenue, because we also want to make sure that if we were at 18% fund balance to revenue, that we don't want that to go down. And so we know we have to grow it a little bit, but that, we can absolutely look at that and say, you know, as part of our final balancing, we're going to take this excess and just transfer it down to transfers to CNR, kind of the Ricky principle we used to call it.
So, yeah, I mean, I don't think we want to do it piece by piece. We got to add up how the whole.
Correct.
picture- That's why I keep asking about September, because then we'll see the whole picture.
Correct.
right? And this will be a piece, a 90K piece.
Correct.
I think it is a big one.
Oh, it is a big number.
Yeah.
That, and I think that even with our 50, that just looking at the encumbrances that are still out there, I think that we're going to give back more than I had anticipated. So I think last month it was, I can't remember what it was, I think it was 100 for payroll, and I'm not sure I gave a projection for the non-payroll, but my guess, and again, we're closing it out, off the top of my head, I would say another 100 that with things. When we looked at the encumbrances to carry over, that we looked at everything over 5,000 that wasn't spent, and it was all the legal stuff that, but you start adding up, you know, when you pay bills, the same thing happens. Oh, it's 200 here, 200 here, and you've got 11 pages of accounts. The 200 in every account adds up to a lot of money.
My last question is, what is the status of the tower grant, $1 million? $990-something thousand.
So I went in a week or two ago, and there's been no update, and we've received, so there's no update online, and we've received no emails that, so we're still waiting for that. But that won't offset costs. That will let us get the
I
cash
understand
back.
that, but it's $1 million that
That's the
we've
radio
talked
grant?
about.
Is that-
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
it's a sizable number that we should either know it or not know it now,
Yeah.
coming up. I know you're trying, I mean, we
Yeah.
should
You
either
know-
close the door on it or
Yeah.
move, or work on it.
I would say we don't count on it. That's, I don't think we're gonna qualify, maybe for a small portion of it that was done after we were awarded the grant. I think when they look at our application, they're gonna kick it back and say, sorry, you don't qualify. I think that's what they're gonna say. That's my opinion. I would not put this in any of our projections. Do you agree, Marcia?
I agree, and the things that, that we ended up having to do were not offsetting any current costs, because we didn't qualify for any of it, or, you know, 15,000 or something. They're all, we would get this Cadillac item or this Cadillac item, and so if we didn't get it, and we didn't do the Cadillac items, we don't have to fund it from something else.
So we're not spending any more money if we don't get it, and if we do get it, we're not getting any other benefit than better stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
We would have more, we would have a backup dispatch center at Center Fire. We would have a backup dispatch center in the mobile command unit. Those are like $100,000 a piece. We would have 2 cases that have additional radios that we could give out to people coming in and going out of town that aren't our normal people. That
Has
none
all
of,
this stuff been defined, or
Yeah.
is there,
we have a sheet I can send it to you.
or is there opportunity to adjust that, or is it like that was part of the grant application?
As part of the grant application, we told them what we were looking for.
Yeah. As you were talking, I was just thinking, if you had the, what'd you call it, the backup? If you had that here, and as part of that backup, you needed to have a generator. This might be a way to get your generator you've been looking for.
We may have the generator in there, that we
Oh,
talked
there
about
you
the
go.
generator, and to be honest, I can't remember if it ended up in there or not, but we did talk about the generator as part of.
Yeah, could we put a backup here in Town Hall, and we need about a 30 kilowatt generator, which is about $250,000.
Yeah, that's where my mind went. I might get a little late with it, but
You know, it's the old, the worst thing you can do is say no.
Yeah.
We should look at that. Let's look at that.
I think we did in this
Did
one.
we? Because I think it's not in the capital, it fell off for some
Absolutely,
reason,
yeah.
but a generator for Town Hall, I think is important, because we need it to run the town. It's great to have one at the senior center, that's awesome. Right, it's great to have at our recovery center, Scandal Lake Elementary and the high school, but if our staff can't get online, and during the macro burst, people were home for 5 days because we had no power.
Any more questions for Marcia?
The generator, the generator that we talked about was for the Vale Road Tower for 30,000.
Right, this is a different
The-
idea.
Brian's thing is, well, you know, if we use Town Hall as a backup
Yeah,
emergency
Command
operations center.
Yeah, and it needs a generator to operate, so. well,
Yeah.
two birds, one stone.
Let's look at that, see if we can update that. Yeah.
Good idea.
let's see if we can get the grant.
All right. Any questions to Marcia? All right, debt policy.
All right.
You weren't here last weekend when we talked about this. Did you watch the meeting
I
by
did.
chance? So you know that we had the two-edged sword of
Yes.
if we're too low, we suffocate, if we're too high, we drown.
Mm-hmm.
So we gotta find the sweet spot.
Yep.
I think Brian had sent his suggestions to Marcia and Steve, they incorporated them into the document.
You if we have that too high, too low, yeah, we have a theoretical, not theoretical, but more of a policy discussion as opposed to the numbers, because these two, we have two targets, right, assessed valuation target and debt service target.
Yes.
They're written differently. So when you think about the targets, the way I was thinking about it, the simple way is they're kind of red, yellow, greens, right? Like red is you can't trip that number, right? Yellow is, oh, you're not in a good spot, be careful, don't go over, but there could be reasons. And then, or you can do green, like, hey, if you're under this number, you're good, you know, which is a little bit like yellow, right? And these two things are written differently. The first one, the assessed valuation target, is you will be under 4%. If you're not, do things to get yourself under 4%. The debt service target is the town will strive to maintain a number below 10%.
So you're saying that may not exceed wording.
Right.
Yeah, so ones are red, like if you're over 4, you can't be over 4. Here it's, 10's a good number, you know, so I guess the question I wanted to have is, what do we want this? Do we want this to be thou shalt not, a red, you know, a red line, a line in the sand, everyone call it, or do you want it to be a more like the second one, hey, look, this is what
Yellow.
we think we should do, and, you know, if you're over that or close to that, you know, that, it's an important consideration, the yellow.
Yellow.
Drop it down one more time, a little bit farther, Marcia.
It was right on the very bottom of the paragraph, is where it's green. Oh, I see. The town shall
So
strive.
go
to
back up a
maintain-
minute, go back up, because what it says here, the policy recommends a debt service rate of no more than 12% in the first 5, but ongoing. Okay.
Now go to
But the other one says, the town may not exceed the sum of 4%, so it's definitely more, you can't go over 4.
Would it depend on what percents
No, I don't think
are
so.
in there?
So when
No,
we did the
it's-
school project, we exceeded the 4%.
So Brian, you're saying
Right?
the two should kind of agree.
You gotta have to, yeah, how do we
So
want this
the upper
policy
one
to
should be,
operate?
Well-
should not exceed
Well,
the sum of 4%.
it should be
or something
worded,
along
the
those
policy doesn't really, does the policy actually govern anything? I mean, you can say it can't, but it doesn't matter because it can.
If the policy has no
It has no teeth.
It has
teeth,
no
then
teeth.
why do you make it sound like it has?
Right,
teeth?
exactly.
So maybe.
It has no teeth.
Right, so then maybe we just adjust the first one to make it sound more like the second one.
Yeah.
Then that's fine. So then it's more of a, hey, if you're nearing this number or you're over that number, you should get back underneath it or adjust what you're doing. Is that what you're all thinking is the purpose of this?
Yes, my personal opinion is yes, I don't know what y'all's my personal opinion is this is to, like, if we get people that haven't been involved in the boards in a long time and they say, well, what did the previous boards do? Or
Right.
what do they do? And they have a document to go back to that says, okay, they sort of set, not a law or, you
It's a
know, a
guideline.
statute, but
It's
it's
a-
somewhat of a guideline
Yeah.
that they've gone through that we need to live by. And it also means if you had to go to 4.1 for a
valid
circumstance or 4.5 for a circumstance, that's their choice, but at least they have a guideline to say, what did previous boards do? Because that's what a lot of the people ask when they come on the boards, or what did the previous
Yep.
board do?
I
You know,
agree
how
with
did
that,
they
just wanna
handle
make sure
the
everybody
floor?
else.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because
so it's
that's
more
what
like
we
a
don't-
best practices than a, you know, this is set in
Yeah.
stone.
Yeah.
I think, are we all in agreement on that? I mean, this is, and I said to Dan before, and you were out, I don't know if you remember, this isn't meant to suffocate the town, nor is it meant we drown the town. We gotta find that middle ground. You can't fire hose the town and put them into debt and drown them, but you also can't suffocate and not get to the growth you need to grow to. So living within that type
we're
of,
good,
the
good.
words, I think you're right.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So what do we, the words would probably.
Use the same words.
Yeah, just use.
You
same
see
So
words,
it
yeah,
stays,
yeah.
so it stays consistent, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
I can do that.
And to your point, in future boards, most of our board members come from the private industry. And the finances and how you look at these from a town are different because we don't have a profit and loss statement, right? So these guidelines are really important, I think,
Yeah.
and they should be consistent. So that people can look at it and say, okay, this is what previous boards could do, and what actually happened. Okay, it was 3.8, it was 3.9, ooh, kicked up to 4.5. Why? You can go back and look why.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And, oh, we had a good reason for doing that. I agree.
And I think it gives, Brian's point gives it credence that you're not contradicting. I hate reading documents like you did, and I appreciate that it says one thing, you can read it one way, and then you can read it a second way, and it's like that interpretation is gray, and
I could see if we left it like this, 10 years from now, some boards get into
No.
a big fight over this.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
no, it should be a guideline,
Yeah,
you know,
okay, good.
again. So did you have any other wordings that you want to?
No, I think that's the concept, so now we can talk about numbers.
So, I have another conceptual thing, and that is, and it's based on how the numbers were derived. And, you know, 10 years from now, we're gonna look, well, why was it 4%? I don't know why it was 4%, so let's start from scratch. It was 4% because we looked at X, Y, and Z, and based upon yada, 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 this policy recommends.
So you want to add word?
Yeah,
I think.
I don't know if you have to have I don't know if it's in the policy, but certainly an addendum or
We
work
have that.
papers or something.
Yeah, we
Well,
have that
we come up with a number,
addendum.
we're gonna have that logic. to-
Right, exactly.
So why don't we have the discussion on the number, and we decide if we agree why, then that gives you the words.
Mhm.
Other towns do that. It's in the Newtown one.
Yep.
The Newtown one clearly states, in coordination with other towns, and each town is audited on whatever basis, they review the towns on a basis, I
We want to be,
believe.
we want to be within a median of the towns, or we want to be.
If I remember right, and I'm
Yeah.
struggling my memory tonight, I had a lot on my brain at work this
It says,
week.
we will
There was something in the
periodically
Newtown
look
one.
at other towns to
Yeah.
make sure that we're in lockstep
Right,
with them.
exactly.
Because a
Other
lot of
towns
that
with,
drives the
uh,
ratings.
With
High
a
rating.
consistent, with a AAA rating or consistent
Right.
rating, right?
Yep. Yeah.
Just nearby towns.
And I think it was
Right,
Newtown
yeah,
that did that. I don't have it,
Comparable
but
towns, right.
It wasn't there.
I'm pretty sure.
I think that's still good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To go back though, that's how we started with the
Oh, yeah,
numbers.
that's what we're
though.
doing.
We did research about
That's-
the
that's
towns.
absolutely what we're
So I
doing.
mean,
It's just
it wasn't,
that's what
and I, you know,
Right.
like, and I agree your point, but we didn't finger in the air this.
Absolutely,
It came
no,
from
right.
other towns, and I also think we took it from the Standard & Poor's rating,
Yep.
something, there was another
That's right.
paragraph in there that had another number to guide us as well.
Yep.
But I agree, because now that, well, how'd you get to those numbers? I mean,
Right.
who decided that?
Right, exactly.
We don't have to go by it, that was just a finger in the air number and. Yeah, I would, like I say, Newtown's wording I thought was good. If we, if you wanna, you have that, right, Marcia? I think I sent that
Yep.
to you.
She's typing.
Yeah, I like policies to be, I mean, it can't be a user's manual, but it can kind of, you know, have some usage.
You explain the rationale.
Yeah, exactly.
What you're doing, yeah.
This is not my strength, I
Yep.
declared this, policy writing is not in my strength
Having
whatsoever.
having references basically is,
Exactly.
that strengths of the document.
Yeah.
What else right now? Or the only other thing I wanted to ask you is, are these, I think these two are good, whatever, targets. Is there any other one?
From
that we
my,
should be looking
I
at?
haven't looked at this in a while, but from my memory is that these are the two
These are
that
the
were
two
the
biggies,
strongest, the two biggest ones. They're measuring the two most important things, measuring what the rating agencies are looking at.
You don't want 15 days
But
anyway.
when
so
I
two
looked
is
at
fine.
them,
Yeah.
there was a few more.
Right,
But these were the simplest to understand, because you can get the grand list, you can do the percentage, you can know the budget, you can do the percentage. This is simple, no variables, boom, boom, straight up
yep,
numbers.
and it's a good measurement for for the balance sheet and a good measurement for the cash.
Cash flow.
That's what they're
And if
measuring.
you get these two, probably the other ones are likely
Exactly.
gonna be okay too.
Exactly.
Okay, good.
Mary, anything you have to add, or you, about the wordings and everything, or we just down the numbers, you think?
Probably just on the numbers, but yeah, good catch on that may not exceed part was a little, could have been problematic in the future.
Eileen, your thoughts? Dan,
Good,
Brian, go ahead, finish your
So
statement.
there's two things, because when we talk about numbers, what Marcia has sent out is the numbers that tie to this that have the total town debt numbers in it. When we get back to what I did, that's really the kind of the operational stuff, so it doesn't have the water debt and that kind of thing. So I think we should start with, you have those, I could bring it up, but you have those two tables of what the
current
the
is.
history has been.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's better for this work, to look at those numbers. Then we can
Yeah, I only
combine-
wanted you for the future
And then I'll
projects.
show, right. that's
You
the
were
next
more for the
discussion.
police,
Right.
because you went on and you showed us a point.
Exactly.
And during the budget season, I saw it, and I can understand it, but I didn't really,
Right, I want to show
Go
that again,
into
but,
it.
right, this other thing is more important
So
for this.
I-
So we're,
I believe the ratios
Yeah.
that I did were based off of the debt service that is only the town side, the general purpose debt, and not the WPCA debt in here.
you have more debt than I do, so I think you might have it in there. Like, I took the debt off the annual report, the debt repayments, and your numbers were higher. So that's why I thought you had more in there.
Do you have the water lines in there?
Oh, you have the leases and loans,
Yeah.
and, I didn't have that stuff.
Yeah, and the reason I wanted those is, I just didn't want to be able to manipulate it and say,
Okay.
oh, because you look at, some of these towns, they do millions of dollars of leases. And, okay, are you manipulating a debt policy someplace that, because you can get a lease
For almost
that,
anything.
as a financing vehicle, and we've never used it for that, we use
I don't
copy
know what these
machines.
well, where'd you go? Where'd Marcia's
I'm gonna
numbers
put it
go?
back in if I can. I have, but I don't think it's gonna work.
I want,
is it?
wait,
If I put this here, is that gonna work? Just one?
no, let's,
I have the same chart.
do
You
you?
gotta be plugged into something, doesn't it? Doesn't the other end have-
Yeah,
Yeah, it works.
you don't have magic, you don't have magic.
One of them
I'm
got
no
plugged in. I don't know
magician,
why there's two things. I never knew why there's two.
Ah,
Anyway,
um,
it just needs
Oh, it's
another
a
one of these. I
transmitter.
didn't bring it.
Yeah, this is,
All right.
Alright.
Then never mind. You can have it back. No, you need another one of these connectors.
yeah, you don't have that on their openings.
I just had it. USB-C. It's back to you. Back to you. Put it up. I
MacBook
can't do
thing
it.
every time.
You gotta put yours back.
I'm just trying to think if I have one.
No, don't worry about that. I'll forward you one. Send you my file for the discussion we have.
We can do it next meeting too.
That's okay.
Not a problem.
Send the file over.
I just wanted to.
Are you kidding?
Start the
Send me a file, I'm
process.
gonna pull it up and give you a computer.
I think it'd be
You
good.
didn't send it to Marcia by chance? Your file?
I will. I'll do it right now.
Is this relatively close? I mean, how much, if you didn't have WPCA, are you gonna really move
It's
this
not good.
number?
I didn't do it on my numbers, so I think these, Marcia's the right numbers.
Okay.
Yeah. That was just a little easier to read, that's all. I just simplify things.
Because I think when you go to it, it pretty much explains itself in a way.
This one. You should have sent this before. What did you call it? Yeah, that's it. All right, sending it over. That's right, yeah. I thought about sending this before, but
It's all good.
trusted technology.
So go back to your Excel while we're waiting for this, Marcia, if you don't mind.
Did it come across?
Oh,
Oh, there, never mind.
This is just her, the first one. Do the second one, the analytic view. This is just your Excel, but I just made it really much easier to see. You know, you go to your Excel, maybe you have like something else open that's preventing it from. No? Yeah. That's it. No. I can look this one here, so.
It's only 20.
You were gonna save me trying to open it.
Oh, there it is.
There we go.
Right, yep. So that was, go to the other one. Oh. So that's your executive file, just you can see all the stuff, make it so it's readable. That's okay.
I'll let you drive. It's a lot easier to talk when you drive.
And is that kind of make it a little bit smaller for this
The
one?
bottom right, you should be able to,
Oh, yeah, just. So, so here's this column is the grand list ratio, and then this column is the percent of budget number, right? So it's the same thing as on Marshall's, I just made it. So you can see that in the last, like 3 of the last 4 years, we were over, I don't know why that much, over 3, I guess. I guess I made green under 3 and, no, I don't know. So as I was looking at it, it looked like we were only over 4% on the grand list once, 2022, that's when the school kicked in.
Right.
So making that a target seemed pretty high to me.
it's when the school kicked in, and that was right before reval where the grand list went up at 20%.
Yeah.
So my thing is, we knew we were dealing with a debt bubble. We've been talking about this debt bubble for 6 years now. It normalizes in 2028. So if you look at 2028, you're normalizing. And now each year it's going down. You look at both those percentages are driving down. 2030 will follow the same pattern, right? I looked at this, the numbers follow down. So if you look at 2028, you're under 3.
Right.
And what is the number? I can't read it.
2.89.
Yeah, you're under 3, but what's the big number to the far column AC?
9.6.
That's the debt service ratio.
Yeah, those are the two numbers we're talking about though, right? I mean,
Yeah,
so you're under 10 and you're under 3.
yeah.
Yeah,
But then we know we have these projects that are coming up in the next 10 years.
this has, Marcia put in 24 million in 2031, right? So there is some money for one new project way out there. It'll get you close to 3. But it sounds like it
could be,
could be a lot more than that.
it could be a lot more. It'll also be a couple of years.
Right. So the range, I don't think anyone would probably suggest a number less than 3. And I would be surprised if someone suggested a number like more than about 3.5, right? So it's somewhere in between those two numbers, right? Is that, I don't know if you have opinions on
right.
what it should be.
It's a guideline. We want to stay, but if we do a project and we go up a few points, then we do it based on our decision, the reasons.
So what is column D?
D is new capital.
New debt.
Okay, so-
New debt. So that's a $24 million spend in 2031 that starts to amortize off as you pay.
But look at also the trend. If you go to the next year, you're adding 22 million in,
No,
but you're still
I
dropping
think
that
that's
percentage.
the-
Oh, that's a balance going down.
Balance.
What's C?
Right, Marcia?
That's the amortizing balance, it says at the top of
Oh,
it.
it's C, what is C? You should know this, Marcia. You should
I
memorize
know,
me.
but,
Oh, it's the existing, I think that's too high, honestly, but that's BAU debt issuances. So
Yeah, okay. So I
2025,
was gonna ask, okay, so
right.
that's just
So
the annual.
It's the 3.3, that gets paid down a little bit, and then you add more, so the net is 4.9, so the balances.
So looking at that, 24 million moved that 0.5%,
Yeah,
right?
Yep.
And what did it move the other number? Because I can't read out in that far column, I'm blind.
actually,
It moved it up from 8.3 to 9.6, because you have a year before you start paying on it. So it moved it up 1.5%.
1.5 almost.
1.5%.
So put 60 million in that 2030
will that
number.
work?
Just for 50 million, just for powerhouse.
Yeah, at the top, you have to enable editing.
You gotta use your own spreadsheets. I'll take it back for the next thing. Oh, I see,
Ashley, is that all formulated?
That's, yeah, I didn't know if it was.
That- So let's change up a little bit for me here, just, so, as I want to understand it. I think it's important we
I have
take
my
5
mouse
minutes.
back. There you go. I don't know what happened to you there.
It's better.
All right,
All right.
so Steve was talking earlier, and I threw out a bogus number. It is 14,755, the library. I apologize, that number's was way lower. Steve said 4 years, 5 years, we're looking at roughly, right? I mean, you,
Somewhere in there. Yeah.
so put 50 million in the 5-year spot. Make that 50 million.
I'm trying to figure out why it's not letting me,
Yeah, I meant it earlier.
Was it H?
Yeah, right, I wanna see it flow,
Well, you can't type.
to see what effect really has on those percentages, right? Yep, and make that 28?
2028.
2028.
2028.
I
That's quick.
tested my
That's
phone.
quick.
That's a good-
I know, right?
That
I thought
changes,
that
I'm
was a
gonna be
plug.
impressed with you, yeah, or not.
That's not plugging, yeah.
Don't worry, just keep it here and then we'll worry about that when I'll show you, because it could be 2028. Because this will give us a rough idea, right? If you put in 60 million, it's taking it over 40.
Right.
So you can
that's-
pull it in, it's gonna take it over 40.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
agreed, the logic works, I agree with
Yeah,
it.
and the debt service,
Goes to 12.
yeah.
Yeah.
Temporarily.
The one anomaly that would affect this, that we're not taking into account right now, is the Iroquois gas compressor. Right now, they're scheduled to go online in 2027. That will be $100 million. $70 million is 70% of that, times our mill rate is about $1.9 million today in additional revenue. So somewhere in the $2 million range
So you're saying.
It's gonna be
the higher
a
the
huge
number,
bump
so your
in
percentage.
our
Right.
grand list. It's gonna be a big jump in our grand list, much higher than we normally get.
Yep, big jump in grants and big jump in,
They're
Revenue.
lower percentages then,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, by nature, so it's
so,
gonna lower percentages.
so that's a positive variance, and there'll be negative variances economically
Right.
too, so,
Yeah, I
If
agree
you-
with
if
that.
you-
yeah.
Totally agree with that. You got interest rates, you don't know what's gonna happen to those numbers and everything else.
I wouldn't put it into the calculation
Now,
Yeah,
we're not
that's
trying
as
to-
much time as we
Right.
actually
Yeah.
see it.
Based
Right.
on these numbers, look, here's just my opinion. If it
Yep.
gets over 3.5, I get worried. Right, unless, if it goes over 3.5, I wanna see that the plan gets it down to 3.5 pretty quick. I don't really feel the need like it has to be at 3 personally. So that's just my, I don't know, this is a little bit of opinion based kind of a thing.
Well, that's what it's all about.
Yeah,
So
so I
don't
was
look,
just throwing one out there that people can react to. So I think 3.5 on that one, I'd be comfortable using that as a, whatever,
As
as a
the
yellow
floor,
flag.
as the yellow
As a
flag,
yellow flag.
but still have a stretch goal of 3.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm okay with that too.
I mean, if you look at that and, Marcia, don't worry about, you're gonna fix it. Here you go.
Ah, she does have.
You're gonna zero out that one?
Yeah.
All right,
Let's see if that works.
there it is.
What now?
Okay. So this is where though, again, when we go to 3.5, and that was the number I was thinking about, but let's go down now to don't, where you going, Marcia?
She's
I'm just hiding.
just hiding unmuted.
Don't- So now go down, so you're already by 2034 back under 3,
And that's,
with a $60 million hit.
Right.
and that's hopefully your library, your police station, your community.
And you're
center
already
library.
under, right, you got a lot in that 60
Yeah.
million, hopefully.
Yeah.
And you're already under 11 on that side. Right?
That's actually not so bad.
No, it's not.
And that's why we're doing this. We're trying to understand what we're talking about. So,
Michelle.
no, because Brian was showing that. I mean,
Yeah.
when he showed his
I
thing
think
at
this
budget
is-
time, it made sense to me a little bit. Not as
Yeah.
stepped as you were. I mean,
And obviously, this is a little bit conservative, you can use the Iroquois thing as one, but also, this is assuming that we put $1,700,000 of new capital for operations in every year, and what we built, if we execute it well, we don't have to put in new capital for BAU in the next, after a couple more years, which I'll show you.
Even for reserves?
It'll be paid on an operation. I'll show, that's the next set of charts.
I thought we were, okay, all right.
That's what we'll show, so if that's the
I
case,
just
that just
wanted
says
to,
these
I'm
numbers.
sorry.
No,
I
this
thought
is great.
was
This is
important
great.
to do.
This is
I
great.
really thought when we were all together
This is
too,
great.
that we can have these discussions.
Yeah.
This is where I wanted to go when you said you were doing things. I need
Yeah,
everybody to see this so we can start to, now,
I didn't realize that column B, I didn't realize our big debt comes down so quickly.
yeah, he showed that though. I remember seeing that and I was shocked
Yeah,
at budget time.
Well,
So,
it's 20-year debt.
it's 20-year
Yeah,
debt,
right.
that's 20-year debt, yeah.
Yeah.
so, on I like personally, and we're talking opinions, we'll go around the table, I like the 3.5 with the goal of 3, right? I
I like
mean,
that too.
and that's how Newtown wrote it as well. They were like 9.5, they want a goal of 8.5. I think on their other, the other ratio.
So you
I-
get two numbers in there. You'd say 3.5 with a goal of
Yeah, I'd say,
Or
I'd say
you
the
could
goal
put
is-
3.25 and leave it
No,
at the
I'd say-
middle.
The goal is to be at 3.
Right,
However, if anything over 3.5 has to have a conscious plan to get you back down. It's a bubble. I don't know what to say, but it's a
Right.
temporary.
Mhm.
Anytime you're going over 3.5,
But
you should
you're,
be figuring out, you should be having a plan. to get
yeah,
back.
and that wording's already kind of in there.
Yeah.
but we do see that it does, numbers are working, they come down in every, like.
Even by adding 60 million,
Yeah.
which gets us
Yeah.
a lot.
Exactly, so then, we can, like you said, it's a balancing act, we cannot suffocate and we cannot
Drown.
drown. So we just have to give ourselves room to flourish as a town.
And that's a lump sum of 60. If you were to
That's
split that out and do, 30 and 30,
Yeah, yeah.
you're gonna, if you did 30 in 2028 and 30 in 2031 or
Right.
2030 or something,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
then you're not gonna have that big jump. Maybe
Go
go
to,
2030.
go up one more.
Yeah, up to
Yeah,
2030.
get a little
Yep.
closer.
Yeah. Well, just one
So you
year.
get one project started and then you're getting the next one going.
Yeah.
You cut the highs off, but the lows didn't really.
Yeah, no,
come
the
back.
low end,
Yeah.
but you're not,
You don't have multiple
Little more
fours, there were three years of 4 point something.
All right, now go back to the input screen. Get rid of the 30 on the 2030 line. Get rid of make that a 0. And go up there and make the next one 50 million, and let's see what the difference of $10 million makes. If we're, when we start to pinch pennies, is it gonna make that much of a difference?
Yeah, you came down to.
It makes quite a bit of difference.
Yeah.
Over here is,
Yeah, 'cause,
Right.
I mean, the total debt is 125, so $10 million is 8%.
Again, that's what I gotta see it though, Brian,
Right, I got
sometimes.
it, yeah.
So like when we were talking about, and Steve talked about, does the police department get 18 million as a add-on to the property and to
Right.
the Grimes property?
Right.
So that would leave you $32 million for the rec center community, or whatever it is, 20
Whatever the
million,
balance
whatever
is.
this number is.
I think the overriding thing here, and this is really, really good, is that, and people have said, we can't afford anything, you can't spend any more money we have at
that's
school.
not true.
If you plan properly, the way this board is doing it, you can show people that, look, we can do these projects without overburdening the residents and their taxes, maintaining a AAA rating, and doing the things we need to do for the town. You can do it if we plan properly. And these kind of guidelines, I think, especially for future boards, is really good. And the way this board is speaking about this right now is exactly, I agree,
You could
with the
have
way
a
to talk about
2.4,
it and the way to plan.
But that's, Steve, I think you wrote a great question. If you look at that, pick whatever you want, I mean, you don't know what those numbers would be, but pick whatever you want. Just leave that for just, so if that's what we were gonna do, does that risk our AAA rating?
No.
It doesn't, right?
No,
So,
no,
no.
I think we're up to 14%, we might, that, 14% for debt service.
For a year?
Maybe not for a year, but it was a few years
Well-
there that were high.
But what you also aren't factoring into this, and this is where we have to choose our numbers wisely, is we went through this debt bubble where we knew we couldn't carry the debt we were carrying, but we were fortunate. We got ARPA money. We had extra and bonding money come in of 1.9 million and $2 million. We had a lot of big chunk one revenues that, again, we planned conservatively, I'm not gonna say that, but we had a lot of saviors come into our lap that you're not gonna have going down the future. So
But
once
this
you,
isn't taking those into account. I mean, we leveled off the bubble.
Is
but I'm
it
saying
sensitive?
affordability, not percentages, I'm
Yeah.
talking about affordability.
Yeah.
Because we had the percentages, but we were paying,
Oh, that's
the
true.
affordability was getting subsidized.
Yeah.
So once we start to get back up to these numbers again, now the town people have to pay for these millions
Mhm.
that we subsidized
Right.
through big grants and ARPA and everything else. I'm not saying it's bad, I'm just saying, when we start to hit these higher numbers, it's more to the taxpayers than what we can subsidize. I get the Iroquois might come in, that's another big thing that might help us both on the grand list side as well as on the revenue side.
But I wouldn't count on that from this planning process,
Yeah,
right?
but I think what you're saying is, look at these years where we have to put $2.5 million.
Exactly.
That's what I'm trying to say, yes.
Yeah.
That, it's the affordability, it's not the percentage.
It's the jumping the 3% tax increase that year to 6%.
Thank you, that, I didn't say it as eloquently,
Right.
but this is what I'm going at is,
Yep.
we were fortunate to do all these things, carry that bubble and maintain the 3%,
Right.
4%. Once we allow this number to get higher, you're getting into the 5 and the 6%. So then we're sacrificing priorities in a way, you know, like, and I don't know, priorities may be a bad term, but
Yeah.
what more needs than
Right.
we want to.
So that's beyond, so that's not the debt policy's job. The policy
No.
doesn't say you have to borrow this money. It says that from a, just looking at the debt in a vacuum, this is what you can do.
Yes.
And then you take that into account with the annual plan.
Yes.
Right.
Should you
Yes.
put in the debt policy, the third item, to your point, to say the increase in debt year over year and trying to, this would work, but the 2.5 wouldn't work.
I don't think you want to build the
That's not
annual
what-
operating budget into the debt policy.
I like the idea, but I'm
I
with
agree
Dan on
with
that.
you.
I'm just saying is, I only brought this point up, is to, we can't go to 4% on this number, we can't go to 12% on this number, in my opinion, because we can't carry that. The policy will not allow the budget to carry it. I think we gotta be, and I think we gotta keep it simple, the policy, so it doesn't get lost. My opinion is you gotta be 3.5 or lower. And on the other side, you gotta be 10.5 or lower. That's just my thoughts. I mean, but we're a democracy, we're not a,
10.5 or lower in the state, I think, I think you can have a 2 to 3 year bubble on after a project.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree with Dan. When you first do a project, you are getting hit hard
Yeah.
at the beginning. Right,
I
you
mean,
should
read
have
what
a
the,
plan
read
to
what
say,
the
hey,
analysts wrote, read what they wrote in the estimate report. It went above target, but we understand why and there's a plan to get it back.
so then do you write in the policies, like a 5-year average has to maintain or
So
whatever?
this-
I don't know how to word it.
yeah.
You're better at these
So this
things.
does say, policy recommends a debt service ratio of no more than, it says 12% the first 5 years of a major new infrastructure project. This will decrease by blank per year until it reaches blank. I think the wording is perfect.
Do we need the, it will decrease by
Yeah, I
X
like
amount?
that
So I don't think we
increase.
can control that, but you can see until it reaches a point of, but I think we can't specify necessarily how much is going to decrease annually.
Yeah, so I'm also with you, Eileen. I think that line is very subjective.
Yeah, but I think this will decrease until we reach X percent.
I think the goal is to
I
be
think you have to be
within
more strict than that, because you can't decrease by a tiny little fraction and have it get to that target level 15 years from now.
I like the 5 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 5 years.
It says no more than 5 years.
years.
I like
Okay.
the 5 years, I just don't think things.
Yeah, so 5 years kind of
Yeah.
implies
So
20%
now you
a
can
year.
actually go to 10% because now you have five years in there. So instead of 12, we can say 10. And we say within the 5 years, which we saw,
Yeah.
within 5 years, we were able
So
to.
if you're gonna live by the policy, all right, you have 5 years to do it, what,
So if you got the bubble, you know, you can only take as much as you're gonna get
Right.
in the 5 years,
Yeah.
projected out.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the thing I worry about is that, like what we're doing in there, you do a police station, and then 3 years later, you do a community center, that restarts the clock, and then 2 years later, do something else, and so.
But that's just on your capital plan to know what it.
So-
But is that allowable? Is that okay? Because each individual project, you're gonna get there in 5 years, you just reset the clock, and you never get there.
You still have, as much as this is a policy,
Right.
okay, you still have mechanisms in place to defeat that. You have the mechanism in place as
It's
a
a
policy.
guideline.
And then it has to go to the Board of Selectmen, it has to come back through the Board of Finance, it has to go to a town meeting,
Right.
and then it has to have a vote on it.
Right.
So your mechanisms for safety are still built into that scenario that you're talking about. The guideline is when people are looking at these numbers, and it's supposed to be more of, like we're talking about, 30 million can go to the police, 25, and I'm just throwing out numbers, I'm not, and it fits within the piece. So when it goes to the next level, you're not gonna get the resistance of the voters maybe to be like, you can't do this, you can't keep going to 12%, then 14%, then work it down. The safety mechanisms, I still think are in place.
Honestly, these metrics, I don't think the voters are gonna care about these, they're gonna care about mill rates, right?
Well,
This
the
is-
reason back
this
of
is
the
us.
There's gonna be the Ron Jackies and Harold Nelsons.
A few, right.
Residents
They
are
care about
gonna
this stuff.
care about, how much is this gonna cost me
Right.
per year?
Yep, yep.
Right.
The
So
mill
That's
rate.
enough.
This is important stuff.
All of
for-
this is good supporting,
Managing
but
this carefully.
residents say, how
Right,
much
to
is
get
it?
to that
This
point.
is what, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it also helps you get beyond that point again if people think, gee, they thought this through. They actually have some guidelines to go by, they're working to something that was agreed upon, you know, and it gives more credence to the whole vote, in other words. And it also gives credence to people that, on the reverse side of that, if we're talking we can't carry more than 12% and someone comes up to us and says we're gonna go to 18% on the debt ratio, it's gonna put a flag up where they're gonna ask more questions, I would hope. You know, on the reverse, it's a policy, it's a guideline.
So to review the bidding then, are we saying 3.5 and 10, and anytime we do a major project, you need to get back to those in 5 years and just leave it as that? I think that's pretty simple. So
Yeah, I mean, I
two-
still, yeah.
I think there is a line here that says, but on an ongoing basis, the town shall strive to maintain
Right.
its debt service ratio below 10%. So only with projects 12% for 5 years.
I would
I
take
don't
out the
think we need the
12.
12, that's my point, you don't need
I'm
that.
sort of with Brian, because
Yeah.
what if you have,
You
I
don't
don't
need-
even know what you would have, but I mean,
It's just, we're gonna strive for 10%, if there's a new project, you need to get back to 10% within 5 years.
because even if we put the hard line 12 in there, I mean, what's it a hard line
Because
of?
we're gonna
So,
branch over
um,
occasionally too.
Can we look at that, before we take that out, can we see what Newtown said? Because I don't want, you know, I don't want there to be a new project that gets you to 14 and then a new
Right.
board comes on and they're not paying attention to it the same way, like. I don't think it hurts to have the 12 in there.
I agree with
It doesn't hurt, so I generally go for simple, but I'm okay with that
you.
too.
I agree.
I think
It kind of
it's
gives
like
an
another,
example
it's
of
like
going
another,
over
Yeah.
10.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an
But
example.
If they-
12 could be expected.
12.
Yeah, if they're
Yeah.
being too
Yes.
linear and they only see the 10, this kind of gives them a little guideline.
It's like another circle.
Yeah,
It's
for
like,
a really
okay,
good reason, look what you
yeah,
can do.
you should
Yeah,
stay
I
under
agree.
10, but if you go over, you know, you got the other circle to say, okay, you know, try not to go beyond that.
Double secret provision.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then with the
So,
goal
yeah.
of, get over that bubble, you know.
So using my colors, under 10 is green, 10 to 12 is yellow, and
Yeah.
over
Yes,
12 is red.
yes.
It's
Yeah.
not,
Yeah.
it's not do not go, it's
Right.
just,
Be
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
mindful, be
Yeah.
mindful, you're going over.
See, there's the indicators, right there that we talked about. That's in the Newtown, they measure against Bethel, Brookfield, Danbury, Monroe, New Fairfield, all those towns. So that's what we, Dan, what you talked about.
Yeah, exactly.
The
This is
same
how we got to these
non-rated
numbers, right?
Right. That's the paragraph in there that covers that.
Yeah.
So at this point, should we just leave it to Marcia to redo this, redraft this based on what we're saying? Okay.
I think we're at that point. I think we've decided the numbers. I think the next point is Marcia redrafts it, and I think it goes to the Board of Selectmen then next, before we hash it around anymore. There's no sense us beating it down or doing anything. It goes to you guys.
I'm not sure that's true. This is a Board of
For
Finance policy.
It is a
Unless
Board
you
of
wanna make
Finance
it a
policy.
Town policy.
It,
I'll check that.
the original one that was sent, we have one for Brookfield, go
Right.
back, that never was finalized.
Right.
And at some point, does this have to get a look by a
I think the Board of
teacher?
Selectmen
Yeah,
should have a
yeah.
review of it and
Mhm.
understand it.
But they're
But-
not the stop.
This
they're not
one,
the-
the one from 2015 says jointly adopted by the Board of
That's what I'm
Selectmen.
saying,
Oh.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what was originally, never finalized by Tinsley.
Yeah.
This is
So-
signed by-
Yeah, but nobody signed it from the Board of Finance.
Oh, okay.
So it was never finalized in policy or in reality.
I think it'd be good if we both jointly adopted it.
I agree. Then it's the Brookfield policy,
Right.
not just the Board of Finance
Right.
policy. I agree with
And-
you 100%.
Some of this affects WPCA, that,
Well,
and the
we-
board.
Yeah, but here's the thing, if WPCA, if they decide they wanna put sewers into Candlewood Shores, you're talking they would wanna borrow 30 million, I don't know how much, a lot of money. But their debt will always be funded by assessments. So you need to carve them out, just like our water lines are always covered by assessments, right? You need to carve those out because it's not a debt of the town. And we don't want a WPCA doing a $30 million project, which shuts the town down. Because of.
No, this document isn't gonna shut the town down anyway. I mean, I don't want anybody to
No,
think,
no.
this
But,
document
you know,
can't shut it down. It's a guideline, again.
It's a guideline, but we want to have it very clear that it should be, we're considering town debt that is not supported by revenue.
Fine, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
So we did have in the policy, revenue debt, that, and we could just make it for our own, someplace in here.
It wasn't, it's flat designated cash flow stream.
Yeah, designated cash
Or
flow
you
stream.
just skipped
Yep,
over it.
sorry. That,
But if we're gonna exclude that from the percentages, we should be clear on that.
so, and we've excluded theirs from the percentages, and we've excluded ours, like Candlewood Lake, is excluded from the numbers. The Candlewood Lake Road, the water line.
This is debt strictly being paid by the taxpayers, not by our revenue stream. This is
Right.
debt
But
that's
again, just- we
strictly
should make
being
sure it says
paid.
that, that's
Right,
all.
but the WPCA debt is strictly paid by the customers,
Yeah,
the
and it's a
WPCA. So this is debt burden of the taxpayers, this policy covers, not the overall. So that's what we're more concerned about. I mean, if the WPCA took on 100 million debt, but if they have the revenue to back it up, it's a pass-through.
If that's what the credit rating agencies say, then I'm okay, right?
I'm gonna remove WPCA debt.
Yeah.
Then I think we're gonna align the numbers.
So then.
I don't have it
Yeah,
in
we
the
should.
percentages that we looked at,
Okay.
but I'm gonna remove the words here.
Well, so, do you want to see this other thing for a few minutes, or have we had enough?
I had enough of this, to be honest with you, if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Because this we've hashed. I'm good. I want, let's go to the selectmen.
Okay, yep, good.
Yours is the next point.
That's
I
fine.
want-
No.
Okay, so we'll update this based on the comments, right?
And the numbers we're gonna put in, and you're gonna
Right.
take it to the Board of Selectmen
Yep.
and say, this is what we're
But
proposing.
let
Going
us
to
send
the
this all to
attorneys
you.
Attorneys first,
Attorneys
yeah,
next.
yeah.
Let us send it to you before we bring the final cut to you guys for any further comments before we take it to the Board of Selectmen. Right? I don't want to take it to the Board of Selectmen and there's something you guys don't like and we bring it to you and then it's got to come back. We can do this pretty quickly. We'll get it to you in the next week, 10 days. Right?
All right.
We're not making any decisions on this in the next months anyway, so if
No.
it takes one more cycle, it's not gonna stop.
It's not time. it slipped away from us last year, and I don't want it to slip away this year. That's my concern of,
I agree.
We got into budget
and
season.
before we
Yes,
know it,
done
we're
before
gonna be,
budget
it's gonna be December before we know it, and people will be on holidays, and it's just life, Brian. And I agree, there's no rush, there's no real critical, other than it's slipping away.
I think we just
It's
we're
gotta
pretty
be
much
done,
close to
it's
the
gotta
end.
be done before the end of
Yep,
Right,
that-
and I don't wanna get into December and everything else, so I think we gotta keep our finger on this and move it forward.
the year. Yes.
So, all right, we have that. new business, we're on
We
to,
have a $1,500 thing. I didn't put any other motions on here because I wanted to make sure we got our agenda out in a timely manner.
do we have to approve that 1,500?
Did we have to do
Yeah,
the
it's a
1,500?
We have a policy for you approving transfers that were
Intra or
over,
inter?
that's all within the
Capital
cash
and current.
policy, but
Yeah.
I think that there were some numbers in there, but it's hard to put separate columns in for all of these. But
I
yes,
don't have
because
that.
one started at 0, so it's 100% improvement.
Okay,
I can pull it up here.
yeah, please do.
To err on the side of caution, we're moving from one project already approved to another, one that's finished and is
Right.
$1,500.
I didn't know if intra or inter, that's what I didn't know.
It's capital.
Yeah,
so
it's
it's
capital, so
between
it's- all right,
projects and
fair enough.
capital.
I don't know.
Let's see. 5, recording, select, so that there was an excess in the parts to rebuild the John Deere excavator undercarriage of, and so we want to take 15,000 from that excess.
1,500.
1,500 from that excess, and we want to move it to design services for the town campus grant. It won't cover the whole design, it's just enough to get something together for a grant
Yeah,
application.
so to apply for the LOTSIP grant, you have to submit engineered drawings. They won't accept it without. So this is, we already have part of it, because remember we did the master plan for the town hall property, the parking lot up here with the walkway that goes all the way around, et cetera, et cetera. This will be a portion of that, but we need 1,500 to update it for the LOTSIP grant. We
And the
can't apply
grant?
for the LOTSIP grant
How
without it.
much is the grant worth and how much would we have to pay if we get the
Lots of grants are now up to $1 million.
Worse than 20%.
No, our LOTSIPs, which one is no match?
I thought this was no match for construction, and we
Yeah.
would just have to
My
match.
understanding was no match from the.
Yeah,
So-
no, I don't think there's any match on it. Design and engineering, again, would be on us, but no,
This
no
is
match.
right.
So this is just a little bit of design.
This is just the basic design. We would still have to have full plans drawn up and
No, this is
updated.
No, this is the one around town hall, this is
Oh,
where.
this is that.
This is, makes us ADA compliant to get
Yeah.
down to the fields as well, so this has a lot of things tied in that we've been trying to do for years.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we transfer $1,500 from the cash capital fund, to move the excess funding from the current project to, use the funding for design services needed in order to apply for the grant for the town campus improvements for the Still River. Do I have a second?
Second.
Any more discussion around this? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes, all right. Other items, Brian, we wanted to talk about how you assessed like going down years. It was like your spreadsheet I wanted to look at now.
Oh, that's what I thought, that's what I was
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah,
Okay.
it was more now, I wanted to get away from that, now
Yours
look at
clear,
this.
That's a little sorbet.
Yeah, it is. I wanted to get out of the mud, okay, for a little while. I wanted to get out of the mud a little bit.
You just gotta do something so those,
I'm gonna run through men's one.
Yeah.
So what's the best way to do this?
Sure. Let me go to the capital. Go to the, don't worry about it, don't worry about it. Just go to the capital tab for a minute. I just want to remind, so this was the model that we did in the budget cycle, so it is a model, right? This is our potential capital plan, not including any new major additions, right? And I made one change to it, we can always change it back. So what this assumes is that on an ongoing basis, that our general capital needs will go up 3% a year, because that's about what inflation's gonna be going up. I think when I showed you last time, it was 4%, that's why the time will change, right? So, in 23, 24, we spent $10.6 million, but a big chunk of that was a grant, right? The budget for this year is we got just shy of 3 million in the current. We're using almost $1 million of excess revenue, and then we're gonna finance 2.358. I'm sure you're gonna tell me those numbers are right, plus the million,
Those are right.
you know, that the number you'll see is the combined of those, right, because we never actually bonded that in. So that's how much we're gonna spend this year. So the model says that in general, we're gonna go up 3% a year. However, the only little tweak was we're gonna keep paving at $1.5 million until 27, 28, and then start selling that, sure numbers. So what this model did was say, in next year, you don't need to use excess revenue. You still have to finance about the same amount as you did this year. And that gets you to, the reason it's not 3% is because paving is only, isn't zero, okay? So that's the first year. The second year, same thing, but we're not going to, we're gonna finance as little bit as possible. So the same, this is 3%, except it's only got paving at zero, so that's why it's 2.3. You only need to bond 850K, it goes down to 600 to 300. So by 29-30, with this model, we don't have to bond any operational capital. So I went kind of quick, but at least understand the concept.
So, I mean, you have to show me the revenue side that covers that.
Yeah.
Okay, right, so, exactly, so
Okay,
just,
okay.
That's the
I don't know which way you start
Right.
with. I don't know which way you
Problem
start with.
No, it's your,
Yeah, yeah,
it's your
yeah.
baby now, rock it.
Okay, so you can go either way. Okay, so now let's go back to the model.
So we're jumping, this is one question, so we're
Yeah.
jumping the budget next year to,
So the
by a
current
million.
is up by 30, is up by from 2 point, right, up $1 million, and then it goes up 1.7, then it goes up 500K, and then 500K, kind of 500K.
Yeah, it's just that 1.7 that would be
Scary.
painful.
Right, okay, let's go look. So
All
now
right.
we'll go to the model. So it just, I'll just lay out how it looks and we can kind of get to the numbers. Don't worry about that, just slide over so we can see column A.
Yeah, what are the labels?
Oh, that's helpful.
Okay, so don't worry about the absolute numbers. So this, and scroll down a little bit and then we'll come back. Or scroll up so you can just see the top so I can lay it out. So the way this is built is that, and this has spending going up 4% a year for the town and Board of Ed. It could be 3 because inflation's 3, they kept it at 4, okay? So you can just see it's modeled out 4% a year growth in town operations and BOE spend. These are the numbers from the prior chart. So there's the 4 going to 5.7. There's your 1.7 million that you were, so this just pulls from the other one. And here's the debt service associated with the finance, which is, we don't have to go to the chart, but I just built a flow through that, okay? So that's the expend numbers. It goes 5% next year, 4%, and it kind of, hops around there. Then if you go up to the revenue, so scroll down a little bit. So here's the amount of taxes that we have to have. I've hit a bunch of lines in here, which is all the non-tax things, which need a little tweaking. But this year we're using about 2 million of one-time sources. It goes down, but I got rid of that as well over time. And if you go down to the mill rate, and actually I'm using the grand list from the budget. It's very close to what Marcia has in hers, but not exact. So you can see the mill rate from 3.87. I built this to keep it under 4, 3.9844, 3.95, and then whatever year that is, I think that's 2829 if you scroll up to the top. I'm sorry, 2930.
Look at it, we're way down.
2930 is when you can have your next
That's the
debt.
affordability
Actually,
part
yeah,
you're talking
this
about,
is
right?
Right, you can actually put the debt in place in this year, and then it starts, you have room to pay for it this year.
That's the affordability we were
Yep.
talking about, Dan. So
Yep.
you put your limits and then the affordability
Yep.
rolls
So we
in.
can take what those charts we looked at, Marcia, this model, combine them, because the assumption's a little different. We can just link the damn things, because the assumptions got the same, and then we can build this thing. So this says you can make your next investment in whatever year this year is again, 28, 29, and you pay for it 29.30. If
Start
you're
paying.
okay with
A mill rate.
mill rate increase, this was the constraint. I said we gotta keep the mill rate at 4.
When is our next refill?
27. Resident 27? Every 5 years?
Right. But that'll still be a
washes.
4%.
Yeah, well, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It washes.
So we could go back and say, look, we don't want a mill rate,
Grand.
we don't want a mill rate that high, we could
Yeah.
have it higher, et cetera. That's the model. So it gets you out of using one-time sources, it gets you out of
Right, this is
funding debt
affordability,
with,
like I was
funding
talking
I believe
operational
in
debt
to do that.
with bonding.
Well, this is what I remember
Yeah,
this. I remember
yeah.
when he said that.
Now
and
you're,
that's,
yeah.
and that's why I asked it. I wanted to get out of the noise and then get to here.
Because this and that are completely interlocked.
Well, I'm glad that we went back to it, because I think when we saw this during the
like,
budget
what the hell is
process, I
this?
was so overwhelmed.
Yeah,
with
no worries,
that I
the
couldn't
time wasn't right.
process all of that.
Yes, yes.
So what's the next year go down? Keep going
No,
farther to the,
It'll keep going down.
that's what I'm saying. So this is the windows we've been talking about
Right,
on working these things out.
right.
And that's going with a 4% increase. And I get some years we might have more, maybe some years we have less with less.
Right, yeah, 4%, inflation's supposed to be 3, so I mean, it'd be good to keep our spending at 3, but 4 is probably realistic. This year, well, remember, this year, it's, just think of the town, so this year
That's a realistic
was-
number for budgets. I
it
mean,
was
we're
higher,
not gonna go much higher than that.
yeah.
For spending.
No, I'm talking overall mill rate. That's
Yeah.
mill rate increase,
Yeah.
Dan, we're talking right there, right? So
I
I
think
mean,
that, yeah.
So, yeah, so we can, so now that the
Did I miss
models are
something?
built, we can say, look, 4 is too high, 4 is too low, well, you know, whatever you wanna do, or, and adjust it. But that, it just gives you the view of when that next big project is currently affordable at these assumptions.
Does this include an increase in the grand list from development and new
Yes,
projects?
so if you go,
Okay, just wanted to.
scroll back.
in development or just the annual certain percentage?
This assumes a pop in, so grand list grew 22 million in this current budget. It has a pop for the next 2 years, which again, these absolute numbers are within 5-10 million of what Marcia showed, so, and then it goes kind of back down, right?
So we have a
that's-
pop coming, because
That's the
Steve
pop.
showed us that from Greg Dombrowski's folder.
Right,
Right.
Your file, that we have a pop coming in the next few years.
right, so this
Yeah.
pop is, we run with 25 million, so it's kind of a 50 million pop over 2 years, which we said was,
Right,
When I
these are
built
known
this, that
pops,
was
this
kind
is an Iroquois pop, this is
No,
the
this
known
is-
ones
these
from,
are-
this is from Greg's Excel file
Right.
that you gave
Right.
us.
right, so this, I think Marcia's would probably actually say these might even be a little bit higher in her model, but, you know.
For what we want, this is exactly what we want. I mean, this is
It's just
close
a model.
enough
Yeah,
to see the picture, to see the trend.
right. So,
But-
yeah,
But this is why, for me, it's important when they're starting to form these committees, and you brought up to have the financial person involved as well as, what can we afford? Because when we start talking minimums, Cadillacs, or whatever, you
Right.
laid out 3 scenarios, we should be able to say, hey, or you have a little bit of, we gotta be conscious. This is what we gotta be conscious of.
right.
And if we could be conscious and play it out and live within these numbers, live within a debt policy, it would
And we
make,
have a plan
it would have teeth, it would have some sensibility.
and acceptability by residents.
And
That's what you
again,
have to have.
the difference between what Marcia showed and I showed is she had 1.75 forever. And so I've taken that out. You know, if we do a little bit better, you know, I'm hoping we get rid of this, you know, it'd be great if we get rid of those 2 numbers, we stop having to issue debt in 26.7 for this stuff. Doesn't really change when we can do our next big bubble, but, I mean, I think that's a pretty good objective to say we're not financing any town ops with bonds. We're only doing it for big stuff. I think that's a huge win.
That'd be,
Huge win.
if that, we got that in the next 5 years, that'd be amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I think the things we need to consider, like the reserves, you know, we know that our demand on fire equipment, I know we have plans for all these, but our demands on the EMS services, we also have the new school, are there reserves that we need to look into, starting
Fair
to
enough,
build
yeah.
for some of those also, so will that line go up as cash reserves? more
Right, we're only,
or-
right, that's kind of tweaking up. It's a really,
Yeah.
it's a really good point, that this is not really building our reserves a lot. This is,
Yeah.
if you wanted to prioritize that, then you'd say, well, we probably have to bond a
Extend that a
little more and
little
slow down on
Yeah.
that. That's a great
Another
decision that
year.
we'll have to make at some point.
But see, that's where we're at
That's
right
great.
now.
That's
And
great.
what
Yeah.
this board focused on for a lot of years was get us through the debt bubble. How do we manage it to keep the taxes down? Now we've evolved in how do we manage going forward out of the debt bubble?
Right.
How are we gonna not get ourselves into that debt bubble again if possible?
Right.
And how do we smooth this out? And we're in the next phase
Yeah.
of this fiscal management process.
And the model says we're gonna try to keep our tax, you know, our mill rates under 4, so everything then aligns up and says, okay, to do that, this is what we have to do.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting I can like 4, I'm just saying that was a.
Yeah, if we.
No, but
That-
that's
that's-
realistic.
right,
This
If we
is,
try, if we try.
this is all realistic things that you can base good decisions on, right? We have to make good decisions going forward. We made, I believe, good decisions in the past. This now becomes making good don't lose the momentum and continue the good decision-making.
Right.
We played defense for quite a while now. Now we can do the offense,
We need to be proactive.
right? And I'm using simple terms, but I mean, that's the reality of this.
Right.
And I wanted to show this because I know you didn't quite
This is great.
grab it either, because
Yeah.
budget was budget season when
Yeah.
Brian showed this, and this stuck in my head. But this ties to the debt policy. If we can work
Right.
within all of these parameters, we have a good shot at meeting our needs. And it's not like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Oh my God, we can't afford this. Oh my God, anything.
Right,
We can afford a certain amount
a certain amount.
that should be hopefully enough to get us through this and not put the burden on the taxpayers.
Right.
So I think that kind of the next steps, these committees on the big projects, but getting the capital committee to actually get a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan established, right? Because this is a real, look, everyone's going to grow 3%. That's kind of a random assumption, right?
Right.
If we've been underinvested for a while, that number might be too low. If we're in pretty good shape, maybe that number's okay. So we need that next step.
And the next step is, again, playing with Marcia's thing, is how much money can we afford to live within the guidelines, fitting it into that? The next column is we can afford $1.5 million in debt in 2028 and $1.7 million in debt in 2029 and whatever it is. So actual dollar
Right.
figures that we can
right.
understand.
So we'll link these two things. So when you put the $28 million in, which he.
Ryan did that already. If you looked at
right.
Ryan's model, I think Ryan has some of that. If
Oh,
you
no,
looked at it.
simple. You just link the sheets and you
Yeah.
put the 20, I haven't
Well, then
built
you're
the
way
20,
ahead
you
of
put it
me.
here and bang, and it'll show you the
All
whole
right.
thing. So it's easy for Marcia to understand.
Any other points on this? I just thought this was important since we're getting to this stage. I thought it was important that we were all together to see some of this, that we all know when we're making decisions going forward and helping the town get to where they're at, and for the future boards, they have something, because
Right.
there might be only 2 of us left on this
I
board.
just have one suggestion on this. When the capital planning committee comes together, someone from this your board should sit down with them and show them all of these things, so they understand it, they know what it is, and they can incorporate it in their thinking.
I think we'll
Pretty
have
much,
that.
you know,
We'll have
designated on that 1 year, this year, what are we gonna do this year? If we show them this, they'll have a better feeling for all of that going forward.
I think we should share with everybody. I mean, too. I mean, we should be sharing this with the departments. You should be
Yep.
sharing this with. I mean, these are things of just planning. And as your departments come for things, they can understand. Gee, you know,
Here's
if the-
why.
yeah, exactly. It's not a hard no, or it's not a hard maybe. This is what we're doing. I mean, this is part of the process. So,
Yeah, I mean, the 10-year plan that we gotta build, if the capital runs it, that's fine, but each department's gonna have to build it
Exactly.
and get it to the, just
Exactly.
like you do a budget,
it's
right?
got to fit the
So they gotta
pieces.
understand it as well.
Exactly. I'm on board. Totally same page. I think we all are. All right. Anything else for another business? Any public comment? Hearing none. I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Absolutely, yes, I-
All those in favor?
Bye.